Hello, welcome back to the JRB podcast with myself, Ryan Levine, joined here with Jeff Jones and Bohdan Temnick.
Hello.
I guess Bohdan is.
Or,
Yeah.
that's you. You're
Apologies.
you're
Uh
Bohdan,
huh.
by the
Uh
way.
huh. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the events that just happened. That would be the UUDS, YCS Costa Rica, and YCS Las Vegas. So Jeff played in the UDS, I played in YCS Costa Rica, and then both of us played in YCS Vegas. And then next week, Bohdan is playing in YCS Sydney. So we've got
Well, yeah.
a lot of events.
But
This is like the singularity, right? Of we've had no tournaments since
by the time
November.
they listen to
Yeah.
this, instead of next week, it will actually be this week. I'm playing YCS Sydney.
Hmm.
All right. I mean, yes.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess there's a lot to talk about, but all of it is the fire deck. So this will probably be an hour of just talking about the fire deck, which seems, I mean, sure, right? So I guess let's start chronologically, and I guess we'll start with Jeff's UDS experience. That seems like the most logical
Sure.
place to begin, right?
Yeah. So I had an amazing time at the UDS. I had a terrible tournament experience, but other than that, I had a really, really great time. I I lost the first two rounds. I lost to Jesse round one, and I lost to Furman round two. And at that point, if you basically just like cannot make top four at that point. At least in my head. So I just stopped caring. Basically every round I played was I lost the die roll. I lost game one, won game two, then won game three, or lost game three. Um, so it was pretty like disappointing, but I really did have like a good time. So I thought uh, I did learn quite a lot going after that, and that's translated into me preparing for Vegas, which we did top. But I thought I would also go over some of the stuff that they gave us because just for showing up, Konami basically just gave us like $8,000 worth of stuff. So they paid for our flights, paid for our hotels, paid for all our transportation. They catered food for us every day. We got the new UDS Black Rose playmat, which is, I think, my new favorite
Yeah,
playmat.
that playmat is incredible. Actually, like that playmat
Uh,
is actually sick.
um, which has sold for around. I've got an offer for between 4 and 5,000. Someone sold theirs for 5,000. We get a custom Ultimate Duelist Series jacket with our names on the back. They had us fitted there, so we tried on different jackets to get our sizing. So they're gonna mail us those when those are finished. We get a UDS exclusive dice set, which are metal and come in a magnetic case, which is pretty cool. We get 25th anniversary quarter century celebration items, which includes a brand new exclusive playmat, exclusive sleeves, and exclusive 25th anniversary dice, which are also going to be metal, I'm pretty sure, but they're going to be catered instead of being UDS themed. These are all going to be 25th anniversary themed. Um, I have not seen any of these yet. They have to mail these to me too because they're finished getting made. But apparently, the brand new exclusive playmat for the 25th anniversary, which is only people who came to this event get, is like I think they said something about it being Blue Eyes themed.
Checks
So
out,
I'm pretty
right?
excited.
Probably Blue Eyes and
Yeah,
Dark Magician and Yugi and Kaiba,
yeah, something like
if
that.
history
Yeah.
serves, right?
And getting exclusive sleeves also is gonna be pretty cool. I'm excited to see those when they mail them to us. Then also we got two more cloth UDS playmats. I got Seal of Ori Calcos and Elemental Hero Stratos. We got the UDS Invitational Elemental Hero Stratos Field Center, which is pretty cool. And then assorted UDS Invitational and pins and medals. I am one of the few people who collect the pins and medals, so I had almost all of them except for a few, and I kept the ones that I was missing. But then I sold the extra ones, and the extra ones were I sold for like $600. So that was like pretty crazy. They literally just gave away so much stuff. It was like such a phenomenal event. They like took us around the Konami building, and we got to see kind of how things were going there, and they had a giant room that was like the arena room where we all played. It was really cool because after each of the days, we would basically play in this arena room and then walk down a hallway, and then there's like a lounge area where we would all sit and eat food and watch the TV as the other players were still playing on the inside of the arena. So if we finished our match, we just walk out of the room, go down the hallway, snack on some food, and watch the other people still playing in the tournament from screens. It was honestly just like one of the sickest experiences ever. It kind of felt like probably like a mini Worlds. Um, so yeah, and Jesse won the entire thing. Surprise, surprise, crazy.
Yeah, literally.
No one ever would have thought.
Yeah, I wonder what else they're gonna have in that room or in that
Yeah,
like
it's
venue.
weird because Billy said we don't know what to do with it. Sometimes we just have like meetings in here because it's just going. It was just like we haven't had done anything there. But it was also like they spent so much money for that event. It was actually crazy, like how
Oh
much
yeah,
money
I
they put in
mean,
everything.
it's been years in the making, right? Like they announced it initially 4 years ago or something like that, and
Yeah, before
you know,
COVID.
yeah,
Yeah.
and finally it happened, and I'm glad to hear it was a a cool event, because it is a cool event, right? Like the premise was super cool, and I'm glad that they, I guess, did it justice. And everyone who was involved that I've spoken to has been happy with it. So obviously that's all we can hope for, right? Is the people involved in it were actually excited to be there.
Yeah,
But
especially because like it was I mean, it was only like 16 of us, but things moved so quickly. It was basically everyone got done so fast. There was basically no problems at all outside of, I guess, with the person who had to duel remotely. um,
yeah,
that was kind of
Did
like a
you
crazy experience.
did you enjoy the tournament structure, or do you think it could have been maybe a little bit more for the player sort of experience? Because I think that's something that Konami tends to neglect, and I think we've talked about it before. And I definitely think
what do you
Worlds
what do you
last
can
year
you
was a step
elaborate
in
on
the
what you mean
right
by that
direction.
before you what do you mean by
Oh,
for the
sorry.
player? Yeah.
Okay. So traditionally in like exclusive tournaments like this, I think that they don't make the tournament like for the player, where you aren't just being put in and then put out. It's like, here's your 5 rounds of Swiss, your top four, get out. So it's less I don't want to say skill based, because I think adding more rounds can also contribute to variance, but obviously like you have it on both ends, right? Where it's like, yeah, the person who went 5-0 can go 5-0 to like 5-3 in like a round robin style event, and then maybe they're not making top cut, but like more rounds does sort of give you more of a realistic idea of what an event or a format should look like. I think Worlds last year being 7 rounds with only 28 people or 27, I don't even remember. I think that was a very interesting approach. And I know a lot of the Konami people that I've talked to over the years have said, yeah, no, like we would rather these sort of events look more prestigious, instead of just mimicking the OCG style of play, where it's like, here is a very
Well, they
small
did
event.
that, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
it six
yeah,
rounds? It was
yeah.
six
That's
rounds,
No,
what
no,
they
right?
no.
did.
More so like, I feel like with North America running this, and it being like not bound too much by any other like previous tournament structure or anything, I feel like it could be interesting to do like like silly stuff, like legacy formats in a pocket of a round. Like, what if Jerome said, yeah, we're gonna do 2 rounds of speed duel draft or something like that. Like, I'm just trying to figure out how much fun you can have when organizing an event like this, where it's like, here's all these UDS champions, they are all competent in their play, they are like the top tier of player, right? This is like bordering Worlds without any of the real like language barriers or restrictions that you would have at Worlds with the OCG players or otherwise. And you can do a lot of fun stuff that is, really just for TCG players in itself. So I was kind of disappointed looking at the structure and being like, oh, this is just, vanilla, like 6 rounds, 16 people, top four, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Like, at least they didn't put you in a 4-round tournament and you had to go X1 and maybe miss sometimes. But
That's
Hmm.
happened to me
part of me thinks,
at the
like, do you
first
think there
at
was
the
something
first remote
cool that could
invitational.
have been done? Sorry.
I said that's happened to me at the first remote invitational. I
No,
went
exactly
X1
though,
and the
right? And
cookie crumbled,
that's
as they say,
yeah.
and I got
But
fifth.
that's
But
the other thing, right? Like, why didn't they give you more rounds for the invitational? Who knows? That's a different question
yeah,
entirely. Different
but
topic of
it's
discussion
that's also
entirely.
years ago, and the first there's a
Like,
whole other thing about that. But yeah, so okay, I would like to say before we
mm,
get too far gone here,
but
I don't think anything you've said
mm,
would make me feel like if Jeff was made to play 2 rounds of speed duel draft, I would not say, "Wow, this tournament
wait,
is for the players." I would
obviously
say,
not
"Wow,
that
they've
not that
lost their
specifically.
minds."
No, for sure, for sure. I think not that specifically, but like just knowing that you're at the venue for what you got in Thursday, right? Or
Yeah, Thursday.
Friday?
Yeah,
Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay. But
Early
now you just
Thursday.
have like these extra days, and really like you're not doing much else in between them. Why not just have like some ridiculous sort of portion of your event be like something that turns into like seeding for like a double elimination for some other thing, like you know what I mean, just like mess up the tournament structure entirely, make it just feel unique enough. Like this event already felt unique, don't get me wrong, but then I feel like the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament structure is so lacking, and I want to see a shakeup in these crazy premier events of like this is the top players, like this prizing is unique to them, and like just like sort of make it interesting to watch instead of just Swiss 6 rounds top cut. Like it feels kind of lacking after a while because like games do just finish. It's not really engaging for everyone to watch like fire versus fire, constantly round after round. And I think they missed an opportunity to make it a unique tournament experience for the player and the viewer. But that's just me. That's me, knowing how cool it was for other games to watch like a pocket of like constructed, draft, constructed, like all of like the silly stuff. And I would like to see Yu-Gi-Oh integrate something like that. And I feel like the team event at Vegas for Ultimate Time Wizard was definitely like the starting point of them being like, okay, we can do something fun. You can do a 3v3 with 3 separate, restricted lists over the years. I think that is like unique enough, and that's what I sort of want to see for events like this. Just really cool, innovative integration into OP. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
like if
just
you have
don't
any
think
idea.
that's possible for this kind of event. I went through
Mm,
before we knew what the tournament structure was. I
mm,
spent like a couple hours trying to figure out what the best way to run this tournament was to figure out kind of what I would be playing in. I thought about, double elimination. Double elimination ends way too quickly. The tournament was lasting for 2 days. You can't do it with 16 people. It ends literally in half a day.
mm,
Then I thought about if they did pods, like 2 pods of 8, and then those 2 pods did a round robin, and then the top 2 players from the round robin on each side get into top 4. That I thought, well, that means that on each side, that means you will never have to play against someone. Like if people like
mm. Well,
Jesse,
that happened at last
Paulo,
Duel Worlds as well, right? Yeah, that was our thing. It was 2 pods, and we're just sitting there like this pod is 3 other teams. Like this is essentially me playing against 4 people, or like with 3 people. It doesn't feel that good.
yeah, so like you could just have like
Yeah.
all the best people on one side, and then
Yeah, yeah.
it's like becomes like super weird.
Mm,
And so it basically came down to like they just did like the actual UDS structure, because all UDSs were all the exact number of rounds that you're supposed to play plus 2, and then it cut
mm.
to top 8. So they did the same thing here with you're supposed to play 4 rounds normally, and they add 2 extra rounds onto it, and then cut to top 4 instead. And I think it was really just kind of because of it's only 16 people, it was probably just the only way you could really do it.
Yeah. You also have like like Ryan said, it's like the people who are unhappy going X1 missing top cut, or going like 2-0 to 2-2, and now they have no redemption arc, right? Because like, oh hey, just by the laws of math, you cannot top with this record,
hmm
right? Six rounds does give you a chance at redemption for 2 extra rounds. Like it's not saying 2-0 will 100% top every single time with 6 rounds or 4 rounds, but having the opportunity is always good. So I'm glad they're doing stuff like that for like I think this is a step in the right direction. I would like some more innovation though. I want some silly stuff.
I mean,
Give
regarding
me
future tournaments, I
ridiculous
hope
stuff.
they do like what Magic has done with their 3v3
Mm.
tournaments, where you share a kind of ban list between your entire team.
So you want
So
like OCG style Master Duel 3v3s where they do
yeah,
that?
but without any of the stupid shit with like oh, you
Like,
pick
yeah,
3 cards and you can
yeah,
everyone
yeah,
can
yeah.
use
No,
those
no,
cards.
I agree with that because I think that definitely doesn't like. I think okay, so I think in games like Magic, like resource system based games, I think it's entirely different. For Yu-Gi-Oh, I think you were just putting the 3 most ridiculous cards, or you were compensating for like one ridiculous pocket of like an engine, and then just making it so your entire team can play that, right? So it's like, what do you think? Well, obviously this is like a tangent sort of thing, but like let's just say hypothetically you pick like which wanted original, right? And like, oh, cool, like you can now play like 3 different decks that your opponent couldn't play, like in like current, hypothetically, and then you just like spread hand traps. There's like enough. Yu-Gi-Oh card quality has gotten absurd, so I think like you, giving the option for 3 teams to play those things is maybe just too far gone. And
Well, I think that also just makes it not very fun to spectate when
mm,
the entire concept is, hey, you don't see the same thing every time.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
I
No,
just I just
I
think
feel it.
Yu-Gi-Oh not having like a color system for its cards and the cards being generic make it really difficult
Mm,
to enforce. Yeah, I just like make it difficult to enforce like a different deck type of rule. Like I guess my experience with it was at the My Hero Worlds. There was a side event where they had a 3v3 and you couldn't play the same starting character, and then there was some other restrictions, but generally when you didn't play the same starting character, you weren't playing cards on the same
Elements,
symbols
basically.
anyway. So
Yeah.
like I think it was like you couldn't have all 3 people on the same symbol and you couldn't all 3 be the same starting character, but that, like, generally speaking, all 3 of you being on different characters solved the other problem anyway. But
mm,
for Yu-Gi-Oh it's like, yes, if like this is going to sound so dumb, if they made a rule set that was just all like each duelist must play a different deck and everybody, we all know what that means. Don't pretend you don't. If they made a rule that said duelists A, B, and C must play different decks, everybody
mm.
would know what that actually means. But that could never be a rule because people would go, well, I want to
I,
play
it's
X
well,
one card
actually,
different. Yeah, and then
yeah.
obviously it could never be enforced because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have those people
There's no
who would
leader,
try to
there's
game
no
this as,
default
yes.
color, no none of that funny
Yeah,
stuff, right?
yes. Like, so unfortunately, um and then on the other, because in a world where they say, 3 people can't play the same deck, and then you have somebody play, you know, uh a Fire King's Snake Eyes deck, and then somebody plays a Voices Voice deck, and then somebody plays a Rescue Ace deck, and literally the only cards shared with the Fire King deck are Wanted and Diabellstar, and I guess Original, but it doesn't play Ash, doesn't play whatever. I think everybody would be like, those are 3 different decks, and then somebody would be like, no, his deck shares 3 cards with the other one, and then there would obviously have to be some sort of rule. And then you get to that rule, which would then also mean you can't all play Ash Blossom, you can't all play Effect Veiler, you can't all play Imperm. And then it gets to the decks are varying in card quality so much that now they're going to, 2 of the 3 decks are going to barely even look like modern Yu-Gi-Oh decks anymore, when only 1 deck can have Ash, only 1 deck can have Nibiru, to the point that it gets so convoluted, I don't even think it's fun at that point. But
Really? I think the most fun part about that is trying to make your deck the best possible way among your entire team. I think it enforces like the most like really good deck
do you
building.
just give each person 1 Nibiru and just cross your fingers?
Uh, no, I think you, depending on what your deck is, I think you decide who can best utilize
Yeah,
these cards, and then
because for Master Duel, we definitely thought that was gonna be like, so
like
you
if
would have like
like if one person wants to play
mm,
Labyrinth can get away with not having to use like all the hand traps because they
yeah,
can
yeah.
and stuff like that. So like we would say, okay, if I'm gonna play Labyrinth, I'm gonna give the deck that needs the hand traps more, and use other cards instead.
Mm. And then obviously depending on like how the tournament structure is going, if it is just like cold 3v3 with shared card pool and you are playing all your games in unison, it's like you just treat it almost like a normal 3v3, where sometimes like let's say like Mexico City, when I'm like, okay, like you guys are both playing cash, I'm player A or C, whatever I ended up being, and I was like, I really don't want to dedicate cards for Cash Tira, right? And just hope that the fact that it is a 3v3, we get to offset some variance, and then it's just like you have one player being this player with the hand trap deck, the other player being good deck with reasonable matchups that is just all gas, like less hand traps, and then maybe you have like the residual hand traps in like a more mid-rangey deck like Lab or something to that extent, right? I think it's just like almost similar to current 3v3 when you get like super duper in depth in terms of metagaming and deck building. It's just like little decisions probably are more relevant because you are actually restricted by a rule instead of like your own arbitrary feelings or like just understanding of the format itself, right?
Yeah, I think it works a little better for Master Duel though because there's no side decks. And I think when you introduce side decking, it gets really, really, really weird. Which, sure,
yes, like what cards am I padding my 15 cards?
Yeah,
like,
but
in my 55 cards, sorry, in my 70 cards, like how am I doing this? I guess extra deck is significantly easier
because everybody gets
like,
one.
You're both playing similar stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone can play one SP Little Knight,
and everyone can play one Access Code Talker, and here we are. Right? Yep. Everyone can play one IP. Yeah, but sure. I mean,
yeah,
like
my extra deck is just all one-offs anyway.
Yeah. Like sure, a format like that would probably be fine to play every so often. Like similarly to how team YCSs are not frequent, this type of team YCS, if they did it once just to test the waters, I'm sure it would be fine, but I feel like it would be very, very odd. But I'm down to, I guess, try any other type of alternative format, but I would much rather have how they did it for the Time Wizard one, which is just 3 different formats being played in the 3v3. Like that would be my preferred.
One person plays Modern, one person plays Edison, one person plays Goat or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, that would be my preferred method of differentiating 3v3 card pools.
I would like that. For obviously we talk about this a lot where we're like, haha, Edison main event. We had that already. I think my big one, I would very much so like them to pick a format after a certain period of time with no significant rule changes, where every card doesn't have some like form of errata or like misconstrued ruling without any definitive proof of like it worked X, Y, and Z way, and then that way we resolve a good chunk of disputes. So, like for the main event, I would enjoy like current, and then a format from like 2 years ago, and then a format from like 3 years ago or something dumb.
Oh sure.
Like, just hypothetically, not just picking like here's Goat format. No one knows how the cards work. There's been a dozen erratas. This is going to be a logistics nightmare. Which apparently the Vegas one was. It was just a lot of people like having issues regarding like here's how current policy works versus like here's how Yu-Gi-Oh used to work in 2005, which is just not how Time is meant to be played.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
wouldn't it just be very simple? I wouldn't have a problem with this. I think only people who have not played Modern Yu-Gi-Oh would have a problem with this.
No, I agree.
Okay.
No,
I'm literally going to finish what I'm saying, and I think the easiest way to do that is just say you play the old format with modern rules.
Well, that is basically just what happens at these events, but then there's still like people who I don't think there's any definitive document that truly explains like how Time Wizard is meant to go, right? Like it's just like we had that one little thing in like the OTS magazine or whatever during COVID, and then afterwards you look at the FAQs and it's just like it's under this ban list. Like okay, and what else? Like how are we doing this, and this? And then you talk to a judge, they're like, policy is the same, but we will be applying, old format rulings. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, oh, you don't know how this works.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this before as well with like, at the actual Edison Shonen Jump, it worked this way.
I'm convinced people like, who like, I don't know. Yeah, we've had so many where it's like people who make the stuff they post online probably don't know how it works. You know what I mean? And it's all there just needs to be. I think we've said this before. I would feel so much better about playing any of these if there was just some sort of compilation of documentation of just this is what we're doing. Not even like it doesn't
Rivalry
even have to be
booklet.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like I don't even need like the individual card rulings. I think what I really need is just like the game mechanics that may or may not have been different then. Like the very, very subtle things. Like I think it's I like I think it's crazy that there isn't something to explain how priority worked back then, because
Yeah.
unfortunately, Jeff, I don't think you can go back and say we're gonna play we're gonna play Edison card pool with like modern rules of no priority. Like that is a different format, unfortunately. And you know, whether we like it or not, and I don't, I think Ignition Effect priority was like the most nonsensical whatever for however, you know, for the decade it existed. And I'm glad it changed, but unfortunately it was part of the format, and it was, you know, the game was very, very different. And I think there would be like, you know, an uproar if they just said in the Time Wizard side event there's no Ignition Effect priority. Like what?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, but yeah, I don't play it.
That's
there's
well,
Edison,
yes.
other
I'm saying we don't think it's as big of a deal because we don't play these formats. We don't make our personality playing Edison. You know, like that's just not.
Okay, well, you just made someone very mad.
I know. I know I did. I know I did. It's okay. But they can't get mad at you though.
I think it's just like what's best for if you're going to have a competitive tournament like that, like a big event for that. I think it's what's best for not only for the people, but like for judges. That way, there is no.
Oh no,
Well,
I
it
agree
works
with
this
you.
way, and someone's like, "Well, I don't know."
There needs
and
to be
like,
documentation. I agree with you. There needs to be documentation of some sort, just to say this is how it is, and it
what happened
the like
fucking
yeah.
20 years ago or wherever the hell.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is what it is. So if they just said, if they came out and said we're gonna hold this another 3v3 and it's gonna be had the same way, however, all modern Yu-Gi-Oh rules apply. What are you gonna do? Not
Not
show up to
enter.
it? I
People are gonna
guarantee.
still go. Exactly.
Yeah,
People are gonna
people are
still
still
go.
gonna fucking
Yeah.
go anyway. So you know what? Suck
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I agree.
But you know, so that was the UDS. You know.
Yep.
Next was Costa Rica, right? That's what you went to.
Yes.
All right, so you can talk about Costa Rica.
When you were explaining your beginning thing, I was gonna say I had the exact same thing. I had a great time on my actual trip to Costa Rica, and I had a miserable tournament, just because I just did, you know. But not a, you know, it's just one of those like we started out 5-0 and then we went 5-3, and I went, wow, that's really upsetting, you know, like oh well, it's like we lost round 6 in time, like just strictly in time, and I was like, wow, that's demoralizing, you know, whatever. We lost round 7, and then we're like, that's even more demoralizing, and then we sat down for round 8, and like, so round 6 we just lost in time. It was like we only had one match left, and we had a win and a loss, and then the deciding factor was the last match going, and then we lost in time, and it was sick, but whatever. Round 7 we lost, and then round 8 we're sitting there like we lose like a pretty close match, but we still lose, and then round 8 we just get team wiped, like just like destroyed. And we're like, huh. You know, like here we are, I guess. Like it was literally one of those where one of us lost, and then the remaining 2 matches lost at this literally the same time. Like we just got team wiped, and it was very demoralizing. But as far as like the gameplay went, I played Snake Eye Fire King, Dom played Snake Eye Fire King, and Nishad played Kashtira. And I know that sounds weird. We talked about this the last episode, where we were talking about like, yeah, Kashtira is like probably okay actually, because it can just play Shifter and like doesn't lose to all the same hand traps. And I actually think for Costa Rica and Vegas, Kashtira was probably like a pretty reasonable pick. But now, after we've now had 2 events of these decks being more and more optimized, I truly no longer think Kashtira is a viable pick. Like, I don't think I would. I would play Kashtira going forward.
3 days or like a week in our group chat where you're like, I just can't beat the Kashtira deck, and in my head I'm like,
I still couldn't beat the Kashtira deck. By the time Vegas came around, I could beat it, but
I was like, unless they're shiftering you. In my head, I'm
no,
like, I don't know what's going on in Ryan's head. Then
no, Nishad's deck was nice. There were so many times I would just look over, and Nishad's field would just be like Appaloosa, Baron, Shangri, Era, Fenrir, and I'd be like, where did he find those? Did he find that Baron on the floor?
I am
like what is?
Yeah, I hear that and I'm just confused. I'm like, how did we get this
Yeah,
far? This deck
literally.
is looking kind of nice.
I know, and I was just like, did
I
Nishad
can't
get
believe
that Baron out of his
Nishad went
pocket?
special summon Unicorn, normal summon Snake Eye Ash. And
Yeah,
here we
I
are.
mean, no, it was like no, like I guess I'll just talk about his deck for a little bit before moving on, but like basically, a bunch of people know about like the Draco Sack make tokens. You make the Crystal G Golem, or you make Link Spiders, then the Crystal G Golem, then you make a Decode Talker. But instead of leaving up Decode Talker, he would just turn that into Appaloosa, and he would only go for that play if he had like Birth or something. So he made that essentially like to bait Nib, and then if they didn't nib him, he made Appaloosa, so then he couldn't get nibbed, and then he just commits everything. And then it's like, if they held Imperm Nib against Kashtira, knowing we would go for Appaloosa, put our hand on the table, then great. But that didn't that didn't happen. It was generally just like, if they didn't interact with him up until his Draco Sack or Heat Soul, then it was like, all right, the coast is clear. We're just going for it. We're just putting everything on the table. And then the other thing was the cool interaction, I guess, of the deck. Like the one that he would just, people, if they did not know the matchup and did not know every little intricacy of the Kashtira Fire matchup, and why would they? He got infinite people with this one, where you make like Dark Arm Dragon of Annihilation, you have Birth up, you bring a guy back, you Dark Armed, pop their Sanctuary, and generally your first Dark Armed will like banish something from your graveyard, then your second activation of Dark Armed will banish your Kashtira Theosis, so it'll add back the first thing you banished. You pop their Fire King Island, then their Fire King Island destroys their whole field, and because it was a mandatory trigger of a spell effect, your Kashtira Birth triggers and banishes their graveyard. And that was one where, like, when you get somebody with that, the game is over. And it is not that difficult to get somebody with that when they don't know that's what you're going for. And then the other, I guess, like, trick that deck had, like, going second was there's a number monster from one of the Battles of Legends sets called Harmonizer Gradiel. It's a quick effect that attaches a monster from your opponent's graveyard as a material, and then it copies the attribute of the cards that are equipped as material, and it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect with monsters of the same attribute as its materials. So you could very commonly make it with Rise Heart, so it would just be immune to fire already, and then you would like take their princess from their graveyard or take their Grunix from their graveyard, and you could just like kind of hold their graveyard pieces hostage, and then it's can't be destroyed by fire monsters by battle or by card effect, and then you can make a Zeus if you want to, or you can just keep their guys hostage under your guy, and they can't even always clear it. It's very difficult. So that was basically what his deck was, and it performed reasonably well. Like, he started the tournament, like, he 2-0'd his first 5 rounds. Like, he was like 10-0 in games. And then, unfortunately, he just, he bricked round 8 and he bricked round 5, or round 6. And then, unfortunately, we couldn't, get the other wins in those matches. But, yeah,
I guess we can, let's note the Kashtira thing when we sort of get into the format like itself after the event rundown as well. I think that's important.
Yeah, so then, my not going to dwell on, the other stuff that happened, but go after Costa Rica, Vegas was 1 week later. So we obviously made some changes to our deck. I think it was like we looked at our side deck for Costa Rica, and like, so the Costa Rica experience for us mainly was we won almost every game we could play. Like, my losses were almost exclusively from I did not play a card. Like, like my round 8 loss was literally just like I could not activate a card game 1. And then game 2, my hand was incredibly, incredibly bad. And then it was, like a 9-turn game 2 that I barely won. And then game 3, my hand was just 5 hand traps. I hand trapped him. He obviously ended on nothing. And then I drew not a starter and passed. And then hand trapped him again. And then drew not a starter and passed. And it was just like, okay, great. Like, I think I resolved 7 hand traps game 3. But obviously, that meant I had no cards in my hand. and no
Yes.
cards that I could play. So, you know, it was just like, okay, great. So some slight adjustment. Oh, and then also we realized that like we looked at our side deck and we were like, I don't know exactly, I don't remember the exact reasoning, but our side deck ended up being a bunch of like utility one of searchable cards. Like we sided Skyburn, we sided Subversion, we sided Kurakara. That was actually for the Kashtira matchup specifically, because we were like, I think if we just side one Kurakara, actually Kashtira gets a lot easier. And then we just played against, you know, like Fire decks and Voice's Voice exclusively, and just went, okay, I think we need our side deck to be actual cards. Like we can't just burn 5 cards in our
Actual
side deck.
cards.
Yeah, like I looked at it and I was just like, all right, my side deck was 15 cards and I did not touch 5 of them. That probably needs to change. So it did for Vegas, and we changed our side deck, and my side deck for Vegas was a lot better. Like I actually had cards for all the matchups I played against, and I was like I was taking out almost every I guess what I mean is like for the weird matchups, like our deck was a little weird in that for Costa Rica we had probably more dead cards against the rogue decks than I would have liked, and not enough cards to come in to replace them. And then just the way our side deck ended up working out, I guess like we fixed all those issues for Vegas, where like I played against 5 Voiceless Voice and Swiss in Vegas, and my side deck had 11 cards that came in. And I had 11 cards in my main deck that were dead. I mean, not dead, but, you know, that were like, you know, like I didn't want them. Yeah, you know, like I didn't want Nibiru against Voice's Voice. I didn't want Valor and Imperm. You know, they get the field spell up pretty quickly, or the continuous spell, and then those cards are useless. And it's like, okay, great, like let's trim these down. Let's get rid of Nibiru. Let's get rid of some of these cards. You know, like going second, I don't need cross out or whatever. You know, let's just get these higher impact hand traps like Bell, you know, in my deck against that, you know, against that deck, and it worked out a bit better. And I was happier with my Vegas deck, but we will get to that soon enough. Yeah, so I think that, you know, pretty much just sums up my Costa Rica experience. I think we were able to make our deck significantly better for Vegas based on our Costa Rica experience, which was, again, like part of the plan, I guess, is like when, you know, we were obviously pretty disappointed when we went 5-0 to 5-3. And then afterwards we were like, okay, well, how do we, like, you know, Vegas is next week. Like, how do we make adjustments? And unfortunately, we didn't do well in Vegas either, but it was, I do think that my deck was better. And, you know, we'll get into the Vegas. We had an extremely similar experience. Vegas, after day 1, we were 7-0-1, and then we lost rounds 9 and 10, and then got like 25th or something, and sick, but it is what it is. And
hey,
you know,
we
we'll
did that Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But we didn't lose anyway.
Yeah.
Until Top Cut.
Yeah. Wait, what? Las Vegas, we were first up to Swiss.
No, I mean we didn't lose until Top Cut.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean. Yeah.
And by
and
that
then
I
got
mean
sad. Yeah.
our last round, and no one wanted to play.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. Anyways, yeah. So that was my Costa Rica experience, and I guess, do you want to talk about your Vegas, or should I just quickly finish mine now that I'm in the middle of this by accident?
And I can just bridge in afterward.
Okay, so for Vegas, we made adjustments. I think it was like there were a couple cards we were thinking about playing for Costa Rica that we didn't like. We didn't end up playing cross out in the main for Costa Rica, and then we were like, that was probably a mistake, so we made adjustments. And we added 1-for-1 to our deck just to help us not brick as much. We still didn't bump Diabellstar up, which I'm still not quite sure how I feel about that, because but that's whatever. As I said, we started out 7-0-1, and it was still me and Dom, and then instead of Nishad, we played with Mike, and then Mike was playing also a Snake Eyes Fire King deck. So this time we had 3 Fire King decks instead of 2 Fire King decks and a Kashtira. And then it was all going reasonably well. And then I think this is like round 9. I think it was very similar to what you're talking about in the UDS. I lost the roll. I lost game 1, but it was like pretty close. It truly didn't feel like one of those, oh, I lost the roll and then, you know, that's why I lost. It was just like I had 1 hand trap. It did pretty well. And then my hand, if it was like a little bit stronger, I think I could have won. Like, you know, I don't think there was anything I could have I think like he ended up having one more. I think it was like he had like Valor, and I think I was playing around Ash Blossom, and I don't think there was a way I could have played around both. I don't remember the exact specifics, but it was one of those things where it was like, well, I can play around a hand trap. I don't think I can play around like all of them. If it's Nib, I can never win, so I'm just gonna pretend Nib is not real, and then I'll have to pick, one of these things that I think I can mitigate to the best of my ability. Oh no, sorry. It was he had a set card, and I thought it was Imperm, and ended up being Called by the Grave. And then I got obliterated. That's what it was. Okay. Yeah, because I think it like Called by the Grave, like a Snake Eye Ash or something that like tributed itself, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm just obliterated. But whatever. And then game 2 I bricked, and I was very sad because it felt like one of those, wow, this is what happened to Costa Rica exactly. It was just like I just drew my hand, passed, died, and we lost, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Then round 10, we sat down against the 3 Voiceless Voice team, and I went, wow, this is exactly what happened to me in Costa Rica. I'm about to get destroyed, and I'm going to be so upset. And then I win the roll, pass, do not play a card, lose, go great, win game 2, and then game 3, I think I can actually, I don't have to say I think, I can actually say exactly every card that was played in game 3. Game 3, he starts with pre-prep. He searches Saravis and the Ritual Spell. I droll. He tactics and looks at my hand. And my hand was Ponix, Oak, Imperm, and Tactics were my remaining 4 cards. He puts my Tactics away. He normal summons Diviner. Even though he just searched Saravis, I decide I'm going to Imperm, because if I do not Imperm,
you're not going to be able to use it anyway.
I just can't activate it. So I'll make him put his Saravis in the graveyard, I guess, instead of dying with Imperm in my hand. So I activate it. He Saravises, obviously, and then he sets up his low and his negate, because he had the ritual monster in his hand. So then he sets 1 from his hand that was unknown. So it's either summon limit or it's the trap card. I cannot be either one, so it doesn't matter. I draw Imperm as my card for turn. So now my hand again is Ponix, Oak, Imperm. I'm very sad. I normal summon Ponix. It does not do much, obviously, and then I lose. And then I'm like, wow, that was really upsetting that I just had 2 tournaments back to back where we started out where we had to win. Like, we had to win 1 of like 6 rounds to top either of those tournaments, and it just didn't work out. And for about 10 minutes, I was like so sick. Not at like my opponent, not at like me, like not at my team, not at anything. I'm not even really sure what I was like. I think I was just frustrated, not like at just like I like all the cards I drew, cards that everyone's playing. Anyone could open this hand and play no cards. Like anyone could open those cards and they're just playing none of them. And I was just like, I can't believe it happened to me on the bubble 2 events in a row. Like I played 18 rounds over the course of 2 weeks. Like I think it was a compounding factor of I left my house on what day was it? What day did I leave my house? I left my house on Tuesday, February 13th. And then Costa Rica was the weekend of the 17th and 18th. And then I went directly from Costa Rica to Vegas. And then that was on the 25th. So I had not been home in 12 days. And me bricking round 10 meant that I just spent 12 days traveling. Yes, essentially for nothing. And I was just like, wow. That's
3 Spanish packs and 5 English packs.
Yeah, literally. And I
Maybe
was
a
just
coin or 2 in
I was
between.
I was exhausted. Like I was like, oh man, like that it was rough. And then Jeff was the first person I saw after I lost, and he was
watching.
And Jeff was like, wow, you are like, afterwards he was like, yeah, you were very upset. And I was like, yep. And then like literally 10 minutes later, I was like, okay,
right,
I'm over it.
I'm in Vegas. I'm really drunk now.
Literally 10 minutes later, I was like, okay, cool. Like a bunch of my friends are here. Even a bunch of my friends that don't play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore just like came with us to Vegas, and we're going to hang out. And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to go get lunch. I'm going to sleep for a couple hours. And then tonight, I'm going to be destructive, like like destructive. I think we ended up going to karaoke and we did not end until like 5 a.m. Like that was that was our night. So yeah, all suffice to say, I had like a quote from Nishad for the weekend, like, I did all these trips and what do I have to show for it? A good time with my friends? Ugh. Like not even a YCS stop. It's like, no, yeah. So
Right.
I just spent 2 weeks on vacation just with my friends. And all in all, it was a fine experience. And like, yeah, for about 10 minutes, I was very sad. But, one thing, I think every single time I do one of these back-to-back, like, travel for 2-week things, I say, wow, this was really cool when I was like 19 and I could handle it. And now I just get sick after, and I'm just like, I hate this.
I started getting sick Sunday of Vegas, and then I was sick until like I was sick for like 4 days afterwards, and I've gotten sick now at every single YCS Vegas.
Yeah. But and then I was like, all right, I think if I just don't do these double headers that I keep saying, every time I say I'll never do it again, I need to accept that I'm
not built for
this anymore. I don't want to do it. I just want to have a couple days to hang out with my friends and play Yu-Gi-Oh! I do not need to be away from home for 14. Like, I literally was away from home for 14 days. I left Tuesday the 13th and did not get home until Tuesday the 27th. Yeah, but
yeah, it's very hard for me too. I went to the UDS and then I came home for 2 days and then went to Vegas. So it was less days away than you, but still, like, I was like, that Sunday, I was like, God, Monday cannot come soon enough to get on this flight home.
Yes. When I was on my way home, I was like, I'm so happy. Like I'm dying. Like I just need to be home. But yeah, all in all, I'm a little disappointed with I'm a little disappointed that I bubbled both events. Like, I thought about it and I was like, generally speaking, how my decks or how my performances end up being in tournaments is I'm usually either very, very right and my deck is insane and I just have a very good run, or my deck is terrible and I'm out by round 6. I've
Vanquished Soul.
Really in literally 10 years, I think I have actually like day 2'd and not like I've not day 2'd many times. As I said, I'm out by round 6 a lot. But as far as like getting up on Sunday and not, and like actually just bubbling, literally has happened 3 times total, and 2 of them were last month. So that is actually crazy. That it's just not something. I'm not used to my deck just being average. I'm used to my deck being unplayable or really, really good. So that was the other thing, I guess, is I was like, damn, that sucked. That happened twice in a row. That's actually crazy. But shout out to Indy, where I was out by round 6.
Yes.
Anyways, that was my Vegas and Costa Rica experience. That was probably my Snake Eyes Fire King experience as a whole. The next event I'm going to is YCS Raleigh, because it is drivable. Because I actually don't even think I was going to go if it wasn't drivable, but I live pretty close, so not sure what I'm going to play. I might even play Time Wizard or something, but we'll see. Obviously, as it gets closer, maybe there'll be a ban list, which
Raleigh
we'll talk about.
Is before any product drops, right?
It is before.
It
is
is
before.
It is the weekend of the sneak peek.
Yes.
And
interesting.
And something cool is that all of the vendors there will be local vendors to that state, and they will all be holding sneak peek at the event.
Wait, will they be?
Oh, really?
Is that real?
I think that is nice.
I didn't know
like that.
That's cool.
That.
Okay.
So if you go to Raleigh, you can do sneak peek.
Oh. All right.
But in terms of sneak peek, do you mean like all the vendors will just be able to sell product of that set?
I don't think we have specifics.
I don't know the exact specific. Yeah. I just know that was the case.
So something that I think is funny and something that they could do, as a public event that probably will end up happening or isn't
Oh, a
announced
sneak
yet,
peek.
because
That would be cool if they did that.
yeah. So like
Yeah.
you have a giant card on the Sunday, and this is obviously, there's got to be a lot of forethought into this, so it's probably just not happening. But you have a giant card that is a giant card of a card from the new set, and let's say hypothetically it is the sneak peek promo. This would be very funny, right? The giant card is the sneak peek promo. The medium cards are the sneak peek promo standard. You enter the event. Your participation gets you, all of the random irrelevant bells and whistles, which is just like the sneak peek promo, the field center, whatever. And then if you make like top 8 in your single elimination event, you also just get the playmat. I think no one's going to complain about something like that, knowing full well it is just Attack of the Giant card with extra prizing.
Yeah.
But then the rule would be, hey, like the new set is legal. And I think that is completely reasonable. It's fun. It's it's something to make that feel a little bit more special.
They will never do that.
Oh, it's sneak peek weekend, right? Yeah.
They will never. Unfortunately,
they will never do that. But
I hope
future,
for entry they give everyone the new set.
Oh, they would also never do
you're
that.
hoping way too much,
Yeah, they would also never do that. But it's okay. It's okay. Well, anyways, okay,
yeah,
Jeff, your Vegas experience before we get too sidetracked,
Yeah.
if you would.
It was fine. It was a very kind of average event. I played with Max, of course, and our friend Vlad from Europe. We went 8-2. We got 11th after Swiss. Max and I played against only fire decks the entire tournament. Max was player A, I was player B, and Vlad was our C, who played against 3 or 4 non fire decks. He actually played against 3 or 4 shifter decks, and I think he lost to 2 of them. I looked over and they had shifter on their turn 1 both games, like 1 or 2 or 1 and 3 or whatever. So card's really strong. Can win games on its own very easily. My deck was I'm trying to think. Honestly, I feel like my deck was still pretty similar to what I used with the UDS. Max and I used the same deck card for card. Vlad used 1 additional card. He played the Snake Eye Field spell. We did not play that. I am not the biggest fan of that card. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. We lost in top 16. I did not brick any of my games. I played every single one of my games that I went first. I won every single one of my games I went first, except for one, which got triple hand trapped. And then my opponent had summoned Snake Eye Ash and then crossed out my Imperm. So he had the ultimate combo.
That is the ultimate combo.
Yeah, it was crazy, yeah. But it was funny because I did that to my opponent the previous round, where it was like Ash, Bell, Imperm, and then I summon Snake Eye Ash and cross out. It was actually almost the exact same 5 card combo. But I just realized that as I was telling that story. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the format is that great. I think that any format where cross out as a card is a bad format. The card is just so fucking stupid. When that card is good, I cannot stand that card. Trying to think. Also, cards like Summon Limit dictate going first. So it's like I cannot wait for that card to get hit. Like,
Really hope it does.
Yeah.
The card is.
So in formats like this, I also feel like cards like Tactics are quite possibly some of the most like high rolly 50-50
They're
sort
polarizing,
of
right?
Yeah. Like I think that's Tactics in like a nutshell. Where like I think
right.
like
I
Tactics
am not
into
joking
control.
when I say this. If I talk to 5 or 10 people at that event, exactly half of them said this card was the best card of my deck all weekend, and the other one said this card was unplayable all weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
Tactics,
that's exactly what happened.
Between me and my opponent's tactic, like between me activating it and my opponent's activating it, Tactics was activated 11 times during my YCS Vegas, and the game ended that turn with the person activating Tactics 10 out of 11 of those times, and the one time it didn't was because my opponent looked at my hand and picked the objectively incorrect card. And if he had picked the correct card, I would have lost. But he pit like I think like he tactics me and he looked at my hand and he took like Valor out of my hand instead of like Bonfire, and my only way to play was Bonfire.
This was them going first, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's I would say you will lose every game you get tactics going first, but I won every game that my opponent tactics me going second.
I
Which is funny
won.
because like
I lost
didn't
every
we
time my
think that
opponent
wasn't the
tactics
case?
me, and so like I guess I actually only got tactics for my card getting taken once, and I lost. Like it was just like I had a weird field, and then he tactics my last fire monster, and then I died. You know, as you do. And then I think like then I only used tactics to take a monster once, and it was a very similar situation where it was like I forced a bunch of things, and then tactics take his last fire monster, and you know he was holding his princess and all of his trigger effects in grave, and when I took his last fire monster, then he couldn't use any of them. So I don't know. Tactics is like for me, like my experience, and like that's a lot of times it was activated, you know. And I guess when you consider that I played between 20 and 30 games, it's not that crazy. But you know, it was activated many. Like it had an extremely high win rate. That card was very very powerful.
But like Jeff, it's interesting to hear you say that every time you got tactics when your opponent was going second, you just like won. Because I remember for like initial testing, that was a lot of our discussion of like, yeah, if we do this like end board, we're just like folding to tactics, you know, like all of the weird stuff. And I assume maybe like
yeah,
you
that's
adjusted
like
quite well, right?
that's what everyone kept doing. Everyone kept making these boards that just like lost a tactics. There's like Appaloosa and Guy on field, and then not adding back Kieran to hand, and I'm like, okay, have fun. Like you're just losing tactics each time, but like there are just fields that are like just as good that don't lose to that card you can make to not lose the tactics, and I just made those fields when possible. Sometimes you have to like scuff it up because you get like double hand trapped and have
Yeah,
to make like a less good
you
board,
you
right?
can't, right? And that's
And
I
then you
think
can't, right? And then you cannot beat tactics a lot of
Yeah.
times with those fields. Yeah.
Which that's a kind of one of those like contradictory how do I put this? Generally speaking, right? When you're making a deck, generally the direction of your deck is going to be either board breakers or hand traps, because when you have a mix of them, it can get very awkward. Like for example, you probably wouldn't put evenly matched in your main deck with a card that with the deck that plays a bunch of hand traps, because when you hand trap them and they end on a weaker field, then you evenly their weak field, and they keep their one good card. Now you've just, you know, thrown like 5 cards away for no reason. However, when they use all their resources to make a field, and then you have something like Dark Ruler, and then you evenly, and it just, you know, cleans up, that's when you actually get value out of these cards. And it's like, generally speaking, tactics is very similar, where you hand trap them to make like a weird board, you tactic something, like you didn't really get that much value off of it because the card you're taking wasn't good, and like they probably didn't really end on anything anyway. But with this deck specifically, it usually ends in like a fairly wide field, and then when you hand trap them, it actually just kind of like narrows it down. Like each hand trap pretty cleanly peels like a layer of interaction. Usually, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously there are some exceptions.
Like if you don't just like so I think sometimes there's circumstances where it's like you look at your hand, it's like the single hand trap, it's like a copy of Imperm, a copy of Valor, right? If you Valor or Imperm like a Snake Eye Ash, and then they have Bonfire, like we're just in the same boat.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. But like pairing obviously, and then some instances where it's just like you are forcing another card to be used like in an awkward order, then it denies another layer. No, I'll agree with that. I think it does come up. But like when you have one Valor and they summon Snake Eye Ash, maybe we're just not meant to Valor it, right?
Yeah,
like,
But then you know, but then it's like when you do have this mix of hand traps and tactics, generally speaking, I would like in a very broad Yu-Gi-Oh sense, I would not consider those to pair very well. But I think in this format specifically, something like if I have like an imperm and tactics specifically, I'm actually like, I'm going to imperm them. It's going to make their board weaker. They can't tactics me back because I did not use a monster effect. And then I'm going to tactics their weaker board, and I'm going to destroy them. And like that is just probably what happens until you tactics them, and then they cross out your tactics, and you know, here we are, right? Like and then it's just all
happened.
Yeah. You know, and then you're just like
I think it's also like when you do hand trap them and then you force like the half board, and then they're just not doing anything to make the tactics live as well, and now your hand like let's say you hand trap them twice, you have the one copy of Tactics going second, your hand is now 3 cards,
Mhm.
right? And if they just flip Imperm on one of your guys, then congratulations, now your other 2 cards have to be
Yeah.
specifically like Bonfire, Dark Witch, and you have to continue playing to force out the Tactics. Like, those are the ones that I see happen quite often as well. That's probably why Jeff was having such a high win rate when like his opponent had Tactics going second. It's just like, it's just not taking a real card spot. And it can function the same way, like going first. Like, you could just get impermed in one spot, and then a card like Tactics is just sitting in your hand. You're staring at it,
Right.
trying to turn it
Well,
into
also a lot
something.
of times, like after they play Tactics, it means that they already had to trade one card into your monster effect anyway. So they're already
Yeah.
down. Even if they did hand trap you, and then they had to like summon a card, it got negated by Appaloosa, which is like the exact like scenario that happened. Was like,
Yeah.
they hand trapped me once. I made like an Appaloosa board with like, it was like Apo plus Whale plus Kieran in hand, and he went summon Snake Eye Ash. I used Appaloosa. He activated Tactics to take. And then I chained Kieran in hand, popped my Whale. He takes my Appaloosa, which is fine. And I go like Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, like a Runix thing. He has to negate. And then like he just loses because he still already used his Snake Eye Ash and needs to have some sort of other follow up. And the Tactics did not generate that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, he had to use his normal summon. The next thing is like you have to have like bonfire or something like that. And then like he did that. He summoned a guy and I activated Princess Engrave and popped it. And then it was just tactics. I don't know. It's so weird. It's a card again, like you're saying, it's very polarizing. I cannot stand cards like that. It's like Droll. Droll either ends the game or it does absolutely nothing.
I feel like a lot of cards I mean, not a lot of cards, but yeah, I would say Droll's definitely the other like biggest example of that. Which like for one of the adjustments I think actually that I mentioned that I made from Costa Rica to Vegas is well, we actually didn't have any Drolls in our main deck for
Yes,
Costa Rica.
I was telling you before. I was like, Droll is not fucking good. It is. Cannot understand why people are playing 3 of this card. It does nothing again unless you have to start with Bonfire, and then you're like, well, if you pair it with another card, it's good. I'm like, well, I don't want to have to do that most of the time.
It's good against the
like,
Fire King deck. It is terrible against the pure Snake
I don't
Eyes
even
deck.
think it's good against the Fire King deck. I won every game I got Droll that I didn't have to start with a Bonfire. Like it just did not. It just does not matter most of the time. You still just do all the Snake Eye stuff, and if you have hand traps, it's just fine. If it's just Droll, it just does not matter. And then at the UDS, I played 1 Droll and Lockbird, and for crossout. And then
that's what we did for Vegas.
And I did it for Vegas. And guess what happened? The winning decks had 1 Droll and Lock for crossout, and that card is just so fucking butt.
I think the biggest issue with a card like Droll currently is like the other hand traps do have an opportunity, if drawn individually, to actually just end your opponent's turn, right?
Yes,
like
100%.
It doesn't happen as often, but I think there is a world where a Vela and Imperm
no, it definitely does happen often.
Yeah.
It actually does happen where your hand is 3 hand traps, Snake Eye Ash, and it gets impermed, and you go.
Or you have like double normal summon, right? Yeah, you have like double normal summon, 3 hand traps. You summon 1, you get stopped. You're like, okay, pause. Like, go time, right? And I think that then the issue is like Droll. If they normal summon Snake Eye Ash and then we Droll them, like they just still make the whole board, right? And they still have the 3 hand traps.
There's at least like something it ends on. Yeah, like it at least ends like there's a princess in their graveyard. They have some other stuff, and you're like,
I don't even want to say like at least ends on something. It ends on something that's fucking good. Like,
yeah, it does.
You float back 2 guys. You SP them.
You also
which removes something
as well, right?
Yeah, right. I'm saying it floats back 2 guys on their turn, and then you search 2 more cards, and then you have your entire hand of 4 other cards. And now also that means that it's just it's just crazy how bad I think that card is. Unless you pair it with multiple other cards, and the other cards, you like you said, sometimes you actually don't have to pair them for them to like have functionality or to like have an impact on the game.
I would argue that pairing Droll might actually just be weaker than pairing any of the other negations as well. So like solely for that, I think like because you're not denying a crazy amount. It's like very specific combinations of cards where Droll is like the best card in your deck when it resolves paired with another negate. It's almost too specific in the current form of this deck. Like I think
Droll Nib is really strong, but obviously that's very
Yeah,
specific.
I would
something else I want
almost
to
make
point
an
out
argument that it is.
is that the
Mm.
other hand traps also, when you use them,
Mm.
they turn on tactics in a way that if your opponent tactics you and takes a card from their hand, it means they have an extender. And there
Mm.
were also times that my opponent had to just draw 2. Whereas with Droll, you Droll your opponent, and then also if you got tactics after that, it's like, which happened to Ryan. It's infinitely worse. Like you'd stop nothing and you open yourself up to tactics. Like a lot of times, like you can't even Nibiru. Like that happened to me at the UDS where I drew my 1 Droll. I Drolled someone. They tactics me, took my Nibiru, and then I just got shit on. I think it also like plays worse in the tactics than all the other hand traps because the other
Mm.
hand traps at least have some sort of impact before
Yeah, like
making
your
tactics
draw
live.
is it's very narrow, right? Like you have to use it in the first instance every time. You can't hold it back like other hand traps where it's like, okay, like you have some forethought with a card like Valor or something when you look at your hand and you're like, okay, well, what
Like
happens
there
if I
are a
get
lot of times
tactics
where
here, right?
if I had like imperm nib, I just held them the entire time. Go ahead and
Mm.
play. Like it puts them on having to have like cross out or something and holding cross out and not setting it, right?
Yeah, like they have to. That one's the crazy one, and I see a lot of people do that towards the end. That's why it's like that's another funny like layer to it. That Droll doesn't give you the luxury of doing. I guess Mourner is also like similar in terms of restriction, but like I think Mourner's level of like impactfulness is just on par with Vela. Like,
And I did not
you
use
know what I mean? It's
Mourner.
like
I used Ghost Spell at both the UDS and the YCS, and Max, Vlad, and I all said that card overperformed for us.
Oh, Bell was so
I
good for me too. Bell was so good.
but Jesse says he will never use that card. He says he
Bell's
hates
so
it. I think
nice.
that card. I think it's very, very good.
Bell's really good.
I'm very surprised that people decided to use Mourner over that card. I think like when paired with cards like Nibiru, it's also just as good because like you don't have to worry about. You can wait till they have Flamberge up, and then you can just go
yeah,
right. All Nibiru now. Bell your Flamberge. You end with nothing.
yeah.
Whereas
I
like
guess it's
Mourner,
like
you're forced to use it kind of
draw
early.
Mourner. You can draw Mourner as your 6th card into
Yes.
like some of these like weird half boards where you hand trap. You can't get through to an Apper, but they set up like Flamberge, Shield Spell, IP, and Spell and Trap, and now you have a point of interaction against like SP. Well, actually, it doesn't even beat SP, right? Because we're chain link 1
I was
border.
gonna
so
say,
it's just
doesn't it not beat anything? Second?
I guess so. I think like there's weird spots where you can like Mourner the IP on summon if they do it in draw phase and then they get Giga Punish. But if they do it in main 1, I guess you force them to SP awkwardly.
Yeah, there was not a person who used it during the standby phase or anything like that. It was all left in the back row until you play a card.
Yeah.
The only time my opponent
that also
had
comes
Mourner,
down to tactics, right? Where like that's like where the punish can be. If you don't get like value off the IP, you can sort of just get like
Yeah, but
stuck
then
in these
also
weird
that like
spots.
you lose to like imperm because that means
Yeah. No, I agree with the imperm
Yeah.
part too. I think it's like relevant.
the only time my
I
opponent
also
ever had
take
Mourner, they
solace
tried
in
to
that one.
activate it, and it was not a legal activation because nobody knows how Yu-Gi-Oh works.
Was it
Yeah.
during your turn?
No, he
Or
tried.
their
He tried
turn,
to
sorry?
nib and chain Mourner, and I was like, "You can't do that."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's just not
This
how."
card says
Yeah.
quick effect. This one
I
does
was like,
not.
"That's just yeah, it is," And
Yeah,
I don't know.
in an
man.
ideal world, Ryan. In an ideal world.
Yeah, I agree. In an ideal world. And I will.
Hypothetically,
My only
what
other
if I
comment about
curse
Bell
Mourner, the Apollosis summon, and then he negates, and then I chain nib.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
is like I played against 5 Voices Voice at Vegas. That is also probably why Bell overperformed.
Yeah.
Because Mourner has no effect against that deck, and Bell negates their best card. So pretty good. Pretty polarizing difference. But,
I guess we can talk about like the other options in the format. I think a lot of people are probably getting bored of the Snake Eyes stuff, and I think it is sort of like very narrow.
Been out for like 2 tournaments.
No, but like I think I don't like saying like this is solved, but like where do you go for a deck that is like very just like it's a big pocket of like well, not big like relative to some of the other decks, but I think
I think that this is a tier 0 format, just like
yeah.
It's literally the same thing like with Tearlament, where like you ran that, and some people try to use these shifter decks.
And like you'd see them like top 8, but like I mean, wasn't Vegas like wasn't it like
So that's what's going to go on to next.
80%
With like
fire decks.
so
Something?
for day two is 248. Was it top two? I think that would be teams.
Mm.
For day two, 181 of them of those teams, which was 700 and I'm sorry, 73% of the top 248 was fire decks, and then once you get into top 16, there were 40 out of 48 fighter decks,
And I
which
will
is
say,
83%.
if we had one round 10, that swings even crazier because, as I said, we lost on the bubble to the 3 voiceless voice team.
Yes, that would.
So,
Yes,
that would have been
that would that would
yeah.
have been 43 out of 48.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine? What if, like, can you imagine a world where they go, like, they look at these numbers and they're like, "Ah, this is fine." But like, if it had just been that little swing, they're like, "This deck is getting banned tomorrow." You know,
Yeah.
like, no, we got destroyed. They destroyed us. It was actually it was upsetting.
So I guess like less of like this is a tier 0 deck, but I think compared to relevant, right? So tier just getting the option to play on both turns in engine without having to put like hand traps, where hand traps like aren't functional cards like by themselves, right? Like they don't turn into anything. I think to relevant is just like way too far gone comparatively, and I think there is some wiggle room in the current format to sort of metagame how people are building Snake Eye, when people are like building their deck to beat the mirror match more than anything, because like mirror match is going to take up majority of spots in the event, so why wouldn't you? And you can't really compensate post side for rogue, if that makes sense. Like I don't think you can ever have enough cards to cover the really broad range of decks in like modern Yu-Gi-Oh that can beat your deck. And I think that's where like you sort of get very jaded when like looking at it. Like you can enter the YCS with Pax deck, and I think you can queue into like Raid Raptor, Voiceless, Branded, you know what I mean? Like all of these like decks that aren't even bad, like they're still doing powerful things, right? But like your hand traps are kind of awkwardly positioned into them. Like these are decks. The same with like Cash, right? Like you can and will like lose to these rogue decks, and I think a lot of what happened at Costa Rica and Vegas specifically is people just sort of playing off like the whole team aspect of like,
Hello.
okay, boys
I
team.
think
Oh, sorry,
I think
my
you cut out. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you cut
sorry,
out.
Yeah,
my
you cut
someone
out.
just called me. So like I think as I said before, like the whole like metagaming approach for like a team event maybe saw some like skewed results for Top Cut, because again, like you versed a team of 3 voiceless voice, right? And I think like a deck like voiceless in the main event of like a normal YCS might actually run a little bit deeper, because we're gonna see all of like the field sort of like distribute proportionately, and these decks that are sort of like the pack deck with like lullaby main, or like you have like crossouts main and stuff like that, queuing into some of these decks like Cash, Voiceless, what have you. I think you are just like having an objectively worse deck into those decks, but you are positioning yourself better when you make Top Cut, and you're versing like all of the good players playing their standard Snake Eye deck, whatever. So I think that this is where like I'm sort of very 50-50 on how the format is now, just because of how like restrictive deck building has been with Snake Eye itself. I don't think you can really like do too much. People going over 40, that's when I think you're too far gone. You have to be at like,
I
it
guess that's
feels like
something else
almost like
I wanted to bring up is that for the UDS, which was technically like the first tournament of this format, almost all of us showed up and had come to the same conclusions. Jesse, me, Paulo, like all these people came together, and like our decks are like 42 cards. None of us had talked to each other like at all, but we all came to the conclusion that like you need the extra cards. You don't have room to like use all these non-engine cards. You need these non-engine cards to win. And you see that also with most of the top cut at the YCS too. That yeah, it's bigger decks are needed this format to fulfill all those extra non-engine hand traps and all that stuff.
And before we started the pod, we were talking about like that small pocket towards the end of 2019, when we had like they like to, what do they like to call it, toss format or something, right? but you had the Orcus deck, and I think Orcus was undisputed best deck of that entire pocket of the format. I think it was way too good. But then a lot of the decks that we were playing towards the end were just well over 40, trying to just like have enough gas in engine to like break boards. We had the Sky Striker cards, which I guess the equivalent now would just be like, you know, people trying to play like Snake Eye Runic, but that's just a pipe dream. I don't think there's any like actual competitive tournament that has moved into, you know, similar territory of like, yeah, like these cards like Shark Cannon, Widow Anchor are really well positioned in the format, and like Engage is busted, you know, and like we're sort of just like at that pocket now, like very quickly because of how fast people sort of move because of these big events. And I don't know where we go with this deck specifically. This deck meaning like Snake Eye, right? I don't know what happens, and I think that can sort of segue into the next topic
Do
of
you do
what
you really think
ban.
you don't know what happens? I feel like just Snake Eye decks just dominate in
No. I mean
until
no,
there's
but
a
like it's
winless.
well, no. That's what I mean. Like I like that's why I was like next topic. I guess we can talk about the ban list. I feel like there's not much else we can really talk about in terms of like Snake Eye, right? Like Snake Eye will remain Snake Eye until the end of time, but like we're not gonna really find anything else. Like everything that people are looking at now, we were looking at the beginning, right? Like the Runic deck was definitely a thing. The Sky Striker stuff in it, definitely a thing. And like we're sort of just like, well, these cards suck. Like, why are we putting these in our deck? And now we're just gonna be flipping coins with mirror matches and getting summon limited and not putting in Cosmic in our deck because I don't want to draw Cosmic when they don't have summon limit, you know? And we're sort of just circling it back every single time. And it just feels like until there is a ban list, can't really do much, right? You can play a rogue deck and still have like a negative win rate against fire, but you're gonna have, you know, a higher win rate than if you're just flipping coins with Snake Eye and you're a worse player. But yeah, that's a different topic of
So
discussion.
one thing I will say about the whole summon limit cosmic and all that stuff, one thing I will say is that it fascinates me the OCG trends that we saw, where like, you know, obviously, you know, people are only, we don't really have access to a very large sample of different decks, you know, like only some very select tournaments, you know, or we have to like scour Japanese like Twitter to see just people who are feel like posting their decks. And it's like, but of the ones that we saw, you know, so generally people will point to these. We saw so many trends that after now playing this format, I just don't understand. Like Cosmic is not good. Like I don't, you know, like I don't know how
Oh
to
Alright,
no, for
so
sure,
sugarcoat
Jesse
it.
says Jesse says the same thing, except I used Cosmic and I thought it was perfectly fine. I don't understand why people are just going to sit there and just fold to summon limit. I summoned that card. I cited that card in like almost every game.
Well,
Uh,
I think against Pure, I'm not happy when I draw Cosmic and they don't have summon limit, but
well,
that's
if they don't
neither
have
here nor
summon
there.
limit, I think the pure deck is very easy to beat.
Yeah. Well, in those spots where you were like you've hand trapped once and then you have Cosmic, you're like down a card. I think like it
Well,
can
no,
be
because
kind
you
of
still get to hit
50-50,
their field
right?
spell. Their field spell can't let them push anything up then.
Well, though they usually if they're ending on like Flamberge, IP, Field Spell, like they're already beating Cosmic, right? Just in engine.
They can, but there are instances where like where so for me against the pure deck,
Mm,
it let them not trigger like talents right away. So like
yeah.
I, I was like, okay, if I summon this guy, they use the field spell, but I still can't use those talents in my hand, etc., etc.
Mm,
But
yeah.
uh, so I don't think like I just don't think there's anything better besides using what cross out, and even then that feels really shitty too.
I
But
think Crossout going second is probably too far gone. I agree with you. I think like the whole like the floodgate thing going first is so ridiculous. But I would like to treat it like some of the other formats we played where it's like I guess Mystic Mine is a really good example, right? Mystic Mine, I think some of the decks that were siding it when you could like you would know people would side it in decks and like I'm not putting Cosmic in my deck as like only a way to beat Mystic Mine, right? I would rather just say, okay, you have to have Mystic Mine. I'm not gonna make my deck worse, especially when like the decks are so powerful. Um, just
Right.
you don't want to have like
So
fake cards, right?
this is what Jesse said, because I was like, "Are you just gonna fold to, the cards like summon limit?" And he said, "Well, I just hope to hand trap them 3 times, and then their summon limit doesn't affect me that much. It just puts us on we both are under summon limit now." Does that make sense? Like they don't end on anything or end on something very bad,
Mm,
and now I summon 2 monsters, and you're also under summon limit, and now we have to grind back and forth under the summon limit.
yeah,
That's what Jesse was hoping. I don't really like that idea, but maybe it's like the best is like, well, if they have it, they have it, and if not, like maybe I hand trap them, and now we're both under it. And that
yeah.
did
I mean,
happen to
like,
me at the locals I played this week, where my opponent
mm,
went first. I hand trapped him once. He set 2 back row and pass, flip summon limit, but now he was under summon limit also, so he like couldn't kill me. And like it went into this place where now I have Garunix in my deck, so I'm summoning monsters on his turn if he tries to
mm.
play, and he does not have Garunix for my turn, and then I ended up winning.
So my biggest issue, with just trying to figure out a way to explain it. Hold up, I lost my train of thought.
I'm gonna interject quickly
My,
then.
so okay, so my biggest, so my other, like, I think this is a benefit, but also a concern, is when we do pair 2 hand traps and they have summon limit, and now they're playing with 2 non-engine in hand, hypothetically, and then we play back, and then they hand trap you. The summon limit's still up, and they have the option to turn it off, where it becomes like its own little like conundrum. So you basically just have to hope that their hand sculpts with summon limit, lining up against your double hand trap hand to make them end on literal poops, right? And then
Hmm.
they have to flip summon limit at the opportune moment. You have to try and simplify the board, right? Like, so it's like they have to hand trap you, summon limit you, simplify the board, but then they have playback on next turn if they gen follow up, right? Which usually happens. Like, not even just like Princess, I think like original and stuff like that does like generate follow up. And I think it's just so specific, it's unrealistic to actually like find a way to solve it, right? Like, given like how it pans out, I think more often than not, you'll probably just get into game states like you had, compared to like what Jesse's like trying, well, like actually probably even close to like what both of you are trying to sort of do. Like the cosmic is just inconsequential. It's just another card we have to draw. The stars have to align. Maybe it's just better to not have the blank and then just
So
like hope.
also I want to point out that also when I cited it in Cosmic, like there are other cards you can hit. Like I Cosmicked
That's
a
tenuous,
Imperm.
but okay,
I
that one is more real. Actually,
No, no, no. I'm
I
saying
thought you were gonna say like IP in this ball and trap card zone. I'm gonna be like that. I actually don't think that matters even that much, but I do think cosmicing a set imper actually matters a
no.
lot.
I
Oh no no,
Cosmic. I Cosmicked an
I
Imperm.
am okay with it.
Yeah,
I Cosmicked a Crossout Designator, and they Crossout
Yeah.
Designator, and they just I can't remember even what they called, but I think it might have been Talents. But I was like,
that
okay,
does
that's
not sound
fine.
like the right card
That
to,
I'm
to
almost
cross
positive it
out.
was the wrong card.
That does not sound. Yeah, I feel like if they call Snake Eye
I,
Ash, you might lose that game, but
but
Maybe
maybe.
they
yeah.
wanted to get their value off their flamberge. Who knows, man? Uh,
Um, yeah, it was.
I
And then there's
guess.
oh god. Also, like there was the game against Jesse in the very round 1 of the UDS, where like I did not
mm,
realize that he had Solemn Strike in his deck, and if I just played the Cosmic, I probably would have won that match. But there are like people are also playing like Solemn Strike and stuff like that. There are like other things you can hit besides that would stop you from playing. Um, so I really don't think Cosmic
So
is that
my
bad.
proposed
But
solution is Pancratops, which is the
I
card that
also
was in my deck.
well, I used that card at the UDS, and that card never did anything for me. But I'm glad that it seemed to do well for you.
Well,
But
I didn't
I
draw
have
it, so I don't know.
oh,
I didn't draw it a single time, but
and who
in
maybe it was
theory,
Dom. Dom said Prankatops
oh
is
yeah,
broken. So I was
yeah.
like, well, I'm glad you drew it,
I
because when I
think
drew it against
I
the
think
opponents
Dom
in
and
the
Mike
UDS, it was
said
terrible.
Pancratops was really strong for both of them. I did not draw it once, but not that I didn't get summon limited. I just bricked, so Pancratops wouldn't have helped that either. Pancratops can only do so much.
So I think the other benefit for cards like Pank is that when they're not like being removal, they are just bodies that are existing on the field. And I think a lot of the games that you're hand trapping your opponent, I think the benefit is when you do have bodies. And I think that's sort of why the Kashtira deck seems decently enough. Like, obviously it won't be the best deck because like the card quality outside of cards like Fenrir is very, very low, right? Like a lot of these cards are just absolutely terrible to draw. They're not functional. Like, their in-engine cards are just not that good, right? But when you do get into the game states where hand traps are just being thrown at each other, I think sticking a Fenrir on field with 2400 attack is actually quite oppressive. And Pankratops does fill a similar role to that. And as I've been saying before, like in our group chats, I'm just like, hey, like, how do you guys feel about like the BIS duels and stuff like that? I think it's just, we're sort of realizing, hey, when we are forcing these really simplified games, like what is winning, we're going to get back down to bare bones Yu-Gi-Oh, stick a big monster and start punching, right? Like, that's how you clock your opponent. That's how the game will actually close, instead of just like, you know, trying to get there with the weenie, like the little guys that are sticking on boards. Like, the game will be dictated by a card like Pank being 26 more than half the time, right? Compared to like Pank being spot removal.
Yes, but I also think, I mean, like, yes, and I think, like, kind of ironically, as the cards get stronger and stronger and stronger, right, the ways you combat the cards getting stronger and stronger and stronger are finding the most degenerate singular cards that stop that, which at this case, after the most recent Forbidden Limited list, that limited, there can be only one, and Rivalry, and goes in. Granted, in the current format where every single monster is fire, I don't, you know, half those cards wouldn't be good anyway. Like, Rivalry and
So
goes
after
in would be
playing
not
Master Duel
great.
for a bit, after
Mhm.
playing Master Duel, I genuinely believe if Gozen and Rivalry were at 3, same with like Tikaboo, I think those floodgates would actually warp the format so much it just would not be funny. Cosmic would just be a main deck staple, because the amount of times we drew rival, like we've been playing like Master Duel Team Wars, right? Haha,
Mhm.
funny. Yu-Gi-Oh. But I'm watching Ryan Yu play. He draws Rivalry, he flips it, and it is the most absurd card I've ever seen resolve against
In
the
what
Snake Eye deck.
deck? What is
In
he
lab.
playing? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay. I was saying he was playing Snake Eyes
Yeah,
and
no,
flipped on
no.
Rivalry, and I'm like,
But
what
like,
is
so,
happening?
but like, imagine
No,
like
I
your
understand, yeah.
Kashtira deck, your
Flipping
Kashtira deck
Rivalry,
now
yeah.
gets to play Rivalry, right? Like I think it would actually swing like pretty reasonably. Like, that is a floodgate that I think is impactful enough that Snake Eye can't really utilize, and it's a card that all of these like weaker decks can have. And I think that's the thing, like, that we found in prior formats as well, where it's like, well, these decks aren't putting up a negate. Like, if I could just set
Yes.
Rivalry and flip
Which,
it, like,
if I would like
what are you gonna
to
do?
I would like to draw your attention back to when we talked about this ban list. I don't remember if it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, and I said I am a little upset that Rivalry goes in and there can be only one, got limited, but Summon Limit didn't, because I think those 3 cards are far more interesting and allow for other decks to actually exist when Summon Limit is exclusively and any deck in the whole game can just go first and set it. Which, if
Yep, I agree.
Rivalry
Yep.
or Gozen were legal,
Similar vein to like
yeah.
anti-spell as
But
well.
I
Obviously,
think
anti-spell
anti-spell too,
functions
like-
differently.
yeah,
but,
yeah. Well, that's yeah. I believe I said, I obviously, like, I'm not gonna say like Yu-Gi-Oh is not worse because Rivalry and there can be only one and Gozen are limited. However, if those cards are limited, I cannot fathom why Anti-Spell and Summon Limit are not. Like, it baffles me that those 3, which, you know, as you just kind of said, like, there would be differing strategies that could emerge kind of supported on the back of those cards. And here we just see, I will go first in the Snake Eye Fire King deck, and I will set Summon Limit in the mirror match because I went first. You know, and I got to put my monster on the field first. And I truly think, like, Summon Limit, like, Advantage Emptiness is forbidden. Summon Limit should not be at 3. And I do not know how Summon Limit has survived for as long as it had. Like, this card has been doing this for, people have been playing it for like 7 years to do this exact thing. You know, like, literally since Emptiness got banned, the first deck that wanted an Emptiness-esque card just played Summon Limit. In 2019, in January of 2019, we played Summon Limit
Curious
at
Griffin,
YCS Sydney
Summon
with
Limit.
Curious Griffin, and it destroyed everybody. Every single it didn't destroyed everyone. Right?
Yeah,
like,
every time
Jesse
it
got
resolved,
second
it
and
was
you got
really good.
third at that YCS, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Which is,
think it also
like,
just comes back to like the thing where if these cards were being flipped in decks that were like fair decks or trap decks or something like that, it'd be fine. But that's not the case. It's
Well,
decks that summon 10,000 monsters, put up a bunch of interruptions, and
mm,
then set these cards. But
well,
also,
that's
the thing about these decks is that the same with Mystic Mine. The
mm,
cards that are good against these cards are not good against these kind of decks. Like, you don't want Cosmic Cyclone in your fucking deck
mm,
against these because it's terrible in most situations. So when people were like, "Oh, just play the Mystic Mine out," no, go fuck yourself. No,
yeah.
it's like that.
So I
Jesus
think
Christ.
it's fun. It's funny though, because like you mentioned that it's just like we have these ignorant decks, and then they build that, they build the castle, protect the castle sort of vibe, and then they flip their floodgate. But if you look back traditionally, when people are like, why didn't anyone play this card when it came out? This card, like, well, people didn't play Emptiness when it came out. You know why? Because it was just a sea of like random mid-range decks that Emptiness doesn't do anything, and people are still playing cards like Breaker, the Magical Warrior. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I get 2 for 1 for fun. You know what I mean? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh now is so far gone. It's like summon limit is just Light of Destruction, right? Card was unplayable. Like you could have flipped it, but it's just like,
But
yeah,
your
they also
opponent had 3
probably would have
Raikos
like
in their deck, right? Like
that too. But
literally,
like
yeah.
would have had a Gladiator Beast on the field, and now you have to attack it, and then I'm gonna flip a thing, and your floodgate is now like an inherent
Your opponent will
-1,
Caius
right? Like,
you and not even get rid of your
yeah,
floodgate. They will Caius your monster and then attack for
no,
2,400.
exactly, right.
And then now you're
So
under
it's
your
like
own summon limit.
it's like Yu-Gi-Oh by design currently. When you look at these floodgates, you just think, wow, this game is terrible. But like, no, in reality, it's just like these cards weren't playable for like the longest time,
I mean,
like a
anti-spell is the same.
considerable chunk of their
Anti-spell,
lifespan, right?
which, like, I will say, I saw this somewhat recently because one of the things that Fonzo likes doing is just looking at old SJC topping decks and then sending them to me and being like, "This is so funny," and I go, "Yeah." He
But
sent me
before you
one.
say anything though, real quick,
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it's anti-spell and Furin Kazin or whatever the trap is. But anyway, go on.
No. It was
Oh,
it was, well, it was 3 anti-spell. So the Twitter meme,
yeah.
I posted about anti-spell was not fake. Like, I picked all those dates specifically, which was one of them was like, 2007 or whatever. It's like there is a deck that like top 4 in SJC with 3 anti-spell in the main, Glad Beast.
Oh,
Because they would
wait,
set
no,
their
no,
spells.
that was justified, right?
Yeah, and then you just
Is that
Kaizaris
still
them.
yeah.
They set their spells and you just Kaizaris them, and it's like,
And then you also like soloed like any of the, again, like for whatever reason, like you had these really like crazy objectively like powerful decks, right? Like I think Darkon and like Lightstorm was still ridiculously powerful.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it's because they could just play all of these draw spells, even when they were limited. It's just so much like they're gaining, they're cycling through the deck, and then they're just gonna slap down like a bunch of these inherent summons that are free, like throw them at you. You flip anti-spell, you can't activate these cards, and your card quality is just way worse.
And then anti-spell emphasizes the battle phase, which Gladiator Beasts utilize.
Yeah.
It made sense. It was synergistic. Other random decks could not really do much with anti-spell because they couldn't put 8,000 damage up, then flip anti-spell, and then your opponent passes. They would like set a monster and then they'd set anti-spell, and then and then games go a couple turns. Now, unfortunately, cards like Summon Limit and Anti-Spell very, very, very frequently just say your opponent has an out to it and kills you, or they don't have an out to it and then you kill them. And like, not to just beat a dead horse, as you just mentioned, also Rivalry Warlords and Gozen Match and those kind of cards can be played going second into a board. There is a strategy you can formulate where those cards are applicable in more situations than I am going first post side. And when those cards are like that, then you can respect them in the format and you can play your deck. You can make adjustments accordingly. For example, in 2015, when Vanity's Emptiness was at 3, you could not just not play MST. You couldn't say, Jin is legal, Emptiness is at 3, I'm going to play no outs to any of them. My opponents just won't have it. You couldn't do that. You would lose instantly. Then Emptiness got limited, and then eventually Jin got banned, and what did we see happen? Everybody had to take all those cards out of their deck because you can't main 3 or more MST. Like, you can't just main deck multiple cards to defeat an unsearchable one of, because you will lose more games than you win with those cards being bad. And then here we are in my opinion, a similar situation when these cards get limited. Like, if my opponent's playing Labyrinth and they flip the one of goes in match, I'm probably going to be sick.
Yep.
You know, and here we are. It's just like,
if you think about it, they actually have 3 floodgates they
Yeah.
could potentially play.
You're right.
So
yeah.
that's just like playing 3 rivalries.
Yeah, I guess.
So something after this discussion, something that I think is very funny and a hot take, and while I think neither of these cards should exist, what if Emptiness was at 3 and Summon Limit was banned and we played the same format? I think that there are cooler dimensions to outing Vanity's Emptiness that we saw in prior formats with cards like Dark Hole, Raigeki, you know, in that sort of sense of like, yeah, I'm gonna like force this and then I'm going to like just trade up by using removal. I guess it's a little bit more awkward when like card quality for like Dark Hole, Raigeki is kind of worse, but you don't get the luxury of like activate Lightning Storm and clear the Emptiness and their board. But I'm just trying to like work out like the layers behind like what you could potentially do if Emptiness did take that spot, because I think the Emptiness Destruction Clause is actually like pretty good in terms of card design, right? I think Emptiness itself is just ridiculous and shouldn't exist. But I think the one takeaway.
So I'm not sure I agree, simply because the fact that you can also so easily turn it
Turn
off
off your own
yourself when you
Emptiness.
decide you don't want it anymore. Like, okay, I don't need this anymore. I'll activate Bonfire, and then I'll kill
Very
you.
reminiscent of pre-errata Imperial Order, where you could
Yes.
turn it off
True,
at
you
will
didn't have to
when
pay
you
it,
wanted
yeah.
to start killing them. And as we saw, making it permanent also did not make it fair.
No, it didn't.
So what I'm saying here is, how about
did
both
kill
Emptiness
my
and
opponent
Summon
with
Limit
their
get
own
banned?
Imperial before,
Oh,
multiple
God.
times actually.
Okay, so let's kind of rein it back in a little bit, as in this was originally supposed to be a sort of Forbidden Limit list discussion. But what I'm getting from all of this is we all agree we would want Summon Limit and Anti-Spell probably to get banned.
Yeah.
Just any objections?
No. I
All right.
think it's completely
The motion
reasonable.
passes.
Current Yu-Gi-Oh power level too far gone. Let's ban these cards.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And then I guess there are 2 questions I propose, 2 diverging timelines, and I think I know which one I would prefer, and I think I know which one you both would also prefer, because we've had a similar dilemma and gone this route previously, which is, for the first Forbidden Limited list with these cards, would you rather have the actual cards themselves be hit and the engine weaker, or maybe trim some of the generic cards that make the deck perhaps a little bit too strong? And I think I would prefer the latter, similarly to when we talked about tier limits and we decided our method would be ban Terraforming, ban Instant Fusion, which Master Duel ended up doing, even though the TCG and OCG didn't. That is the route that Master Duel eventually went, which was kind of cool to see. I would propose on a forbidden list that would, like, hypothetically, if I think I was talking to Jeff about this before we started recording. In my opinion, there are only 2 real logical options for when a ban list could come out. They either do one around March 20th, maybe a little sooner. Basically, YCS Sydney is in a week, and then there is a 3-week gap before the YCS in Colombia. But then after the YCS in Colombia, there are 2 more events in 3 weeks. So it would be really awkward to have one after Colombia and then before Guadalajara or Raleigh. So I feel like it would either be after Sydney but before Colombia in the gap, which logically the ban list would fall somewhere around like March 18th, March 20th, somewhere in that vein. And if there is not a list then, I do not think there could be a list until May. That would be the next time where there like isn't an event where there, because we literally have a 2-week gap and then a 1-week gap and then a 2-week gap for 3 events after that. And the reason I feel like a list would make sense after Colombia and before the next 3 events is because there are no new cards coming out. Legacy of Destruction is legal for Brazil, but it's not legal for Guadalajara or Raleigh. So I think it would be weird if we had 8 events with the same card pool and the same list. Like that would be abnormal, right? To have that many events.
Well, how many events could you play tournaments at? Because I feel like it was a fucking shit ton.
Well, yeah, there were ban lists that just didn't actually kill the deck, but there were like 2 ban lists in between.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm just sitting there thinking. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, yeah, we got rid of Mystic Mine.
We got rid of Mystic Mine. There was the one that got rid of like Ronin Totem, you know, like and all that stuff.
Okay.
But
Well, okay. So let's also look at it from that perspective. What if we do get a list, and then all they do is deal with the floodgates? Like,
I wouldn't even be that opposed to that. I wouldn't be that like I would prefer that to not having a list. Like I would you know, but one thing,
I guess I would prefer that to not having a list.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I feel like they could just ban 1 or 2 cards.
which I want to talk about. I want to have a discussion. I think, which we've actually had this discussion already. I actually think Link Karibo should be banned.
Yes, that's on my list.
I think that card should be banned. I think that card is so unreasonable. And
okay, well, calm down. To call that card unreasonable compared to other cards,
it eliminates so much of the counterplay, like so much of it, of just and like of it. It's kind of funny that it's such an unassuming card. I mean, that card has been broken since it came out. Like that card enables so much, but it's like it is so crazy how many of its effects are like. If you don't imperm their first level 1 monster, you can never imperm them because Link Karibo will be in their graveyard and then they can dodge imperm and Veiler. You have a much harder time forcing battle phase against cards like SP and IP and Appaloosa because Link Karibo exists.
The big one because it means you cannot attack over Appaloosa, which is like the main way. If it has usually a 1600 attack Appaloosa, you can try to attack over. Now you can't.
Yes.
So the battle phase is not an answer to Appaloosa.
Same
anymore.
Or IP. Same. I guess SP is less relevant, but IP and Appaloosa.
Also, I think Appaloosa should be banned, but I know it's not going to because they're also
it's literally going to be reprinted in Ready Collection.
So I feel that way about IP as well when I look at all of like the promo and media coming out of Japan, right? And obviously like it has no real bearing because like we've seen stuff like that before with like the Sky Striker stuff getting banned, and it's just like, yeah, let's just keep printing it. But then we've also seen those cards just slowly creep back to 3, and there's more Sky Striker media getting put out there and like all of the silly stuff.
Yeah,
I think IP is probably safe for like a good chunk of time, and I think it's more likely we see.
I feel like that card will never get banned.
Yeah. I think they might treat it like, I don't want to say they're going to treat it like Fibrax because I don't think IP is even close to Fibrax.
No,
but I think it is more likely in my head to see some of the silly cards that get facilitated on your opponent's turn by IP maybe get moved. Like SP at some point probably shouldn't, but I think that's like maybe where they would end up going instead of banning IP itself. But I don't think IP is particularly like ridiculous.
I'm never mad when my opponent summons an IP. However, I have gotten mad when my opponent has summoned an Appaloosa, both on their turn and my own turn. And the common denominator between all of that is the Appaloosa being summoned.
Yeah, but like I guess we can look at like the cards like Appo, Savage, and like Baron.
No, right? I want to look at Zealantis.
So
that card is
I'm pretty sure that card. I read that card that said I think this card will be banned.
We said that when we talked about it originally. We said this card will be banned. We did.
Simply because it resets all the fact that it resets the effects of your monsters like is just so crazy. Like
it's that, and I think the random crazy like this card. Whenever I like see a ruling or something where it's just like, yeah, you can do this like under summon limit and no one summons anything. You know what I mean? Like, well, like the opponent might just not summon anything if they proc like a Flamberge and they've summoned twice, like under, you know what I mean? Like the silly weird interactions that like don't come up. But just like reading it, it's just like, yeah, you can activate this under Gozen. Like if they're like waterlocked, they can't summon anything.
Yeah,
you know, like the silly shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're just like, why? Why is this card allowed to like that's never the reason why I'm playing it. Obviously like the card in its current form is doing 100 different things, but like just looking at it and thinking, why would you make this card like better? This card already does something that's borderline custom card, and it's like now this is just spot removal randomly, right? Like,
it also just pops cards in the battle phase after repositioning your Link Arrow. This like we said this when it came out, and we said this card is unreasonable. You know, when it came out, it was Dabble, right? And it's like, technically nothing would play this right now, but this card is so blatantly unhinged that like something will play it and something will make this look like the best card you've ever seen in your life, and like this is doing it. And you know, if the argument
as
is
we like
you
to
can't
say-
hit what? As we like to say,
Sorry,
what?
as we like to say, card that can only be used for evil.
Yes, that
But
Zelantis is a
thought
card
out,
that can
and
only be used
I
for
want to
evil.
just bring up the decks that use Zelantis
Yeah.
after you get your point out, because this is funny.
Yeah, so Zelantis is just a card that like Yu-Gi-Oh is not made better or more interesting with. I would actually argue Yu-Gi-Oh is made much less interesting with Zelantis in the game. But yeah, so I think Zelantis and Link Karibo are my two prime. Like, they are not expensive. They're not, you know, like nobody will be like, oh no, I just spent, like, if you ban like something Raging Phoenix, if that was somehow the direction they decided, people, there's a feels bad of, this card came out very recently, this card was $50, I'm sick. Zelantis got reprinted 7 months ago.
Players.
Yes. Zelantis got reprinted 7 months ago.
No, like actually.
It is like $2. You know, it is like, Zelantis is a card that I think, as we've said, can only be used for evil. We've now seen the evil it's capable of. I would not be shocked if it ends up banned. Link Karibo, I would be a little more shocked, but you know, like, just because I don't think they will, but I would like it to be. I think it is just one of the generic cards I look at and I go, this does a little bit too much for free. Like, this is a card that is in your extra deck. It is a Link one. It is a little bit too much for no cost whatsoever.
Just quickly though, so I've been, off the top of my head, the decks that will miss this Zelantis outside of the current form that we're at now will be Pendulum, Marine sets, and then like random FTK decks that are only facilitated by Zelantis being a way to enable a second trigger. So I don't think anyone's gonna miss this. No one's gonna truly be upset. I think they could ban that tomorrow, and everyone will just be like, "Oh, cool!" Like they'll blink, and that'll be it. The card is gone. That is it. I agree with you. I think that card should just go only used for evil, so on, so forth.
So I've talked about this before, but I think the card that should go is Original Sinful Spoils. I think if you just ban this card, a lot of things become way more manageable, and it becomes basically, now you either play Pure Fire King, which you could not really play before, but now you actually have Princess to like make Fire King better, or you play Pure Snake Eye. And the thing is that also that the Pure Snake Eye deck gets way weaker because it means Diabellstar is not as good, and it means Wanted is not as good because you're not also drawing a card for free after searching your entire combo and whatnot. I think every other hit besides banning this card is just slapping it on the wrist and trying to put a band-aid on something, and you're going to have to hit more cards in the future anyway.
And then eventually hit that card anyway. Like, probably it'll all come back to hitting that card in the future.
Probably. Right, or it could be like, oh, I don't like this idea, but they've banned Merly in Master Duel, so like banning Snake Eye Ash, like eventually down the line, instead of like hitting. So like a reason why I think Original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye is also just like a $6 card, which is another reason why I think it's fine to hit. But I think also it means that you just actually Diabellstar kind of does nothing. It searches a trap card that can negate something now.
Yeah.
And in the future, in the next set, there are cards you can search. But outside of that, the only use for that card, for Diabellstar, which is like a very important card both in lore and like for future sets, is Original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye. And I don't think you would actually, I can't imagine you would play that card anymore. And that might be a reason for them not to do it. It's like, oh, we want people to play Diabellstar. We want people who spent the money on Diabellstar to like be able to use their card. And but I think realistically, like, this card just does so much. Like, it's I just can't put into words how we use the word custom card, term custom card a lot. This is like a custom card. Like, summon a guy from back next turn, search another card. Also, you can put it back on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. Like,
the enable is just so ridiculous. Like, just having the follow up. I think is a big thing that people sort of neglect. Like that's my big thing when approaching this mirror match now is just like determining when I want to hand trap someone based on like, all right, how strong is my hand, and do I just lose to my opponent banishing original engrave and then playing again? Like just piecing
Yeah,
that together. And I'm just like, if that was
a
gone, I'd be
huge
fine.
thing. Was like I can clear their board and their field and like use a hand trap, but they also just have follow up because they can just search to level 1 and do everything again next turn.
Mhm.
Uh, Also, I think that a huge problem I have with this card is also what makes things like Baron possible in decks that normally shouldn't be, and I think that card should be banned. And then, like, if you ban this card, you maybe can let Baron live a little bit longer. And also, you have
Yeah.
Savage, which is also a card that could maybe get banned. Like, which I think
Jet
people who maybe
Synchron? I don't really think
I-
he deserves to get
Jet
banned
Jet
again.
Jet
No,
needs to
I
be enabled. Like
But
I
maybe.
don't,
No,
I think Jet probably shouldn't exist. Like it is just a silly card, but
really, I mean, Japan has Jet Synchron and they have Glow Up Bulb, and they don't even play Glow Up Bulb. They just play Jet Synchron because
Well,
you can
that's-
search it off.
Yeah, that's what he's. Yeah, that's So if they're like, if they ban Jet Synchron and unbanned Glow Up Bulb, that would be very interesting. Because
it would
technically,
be funny. I don't know how I
right
would
now,
feel.
Glow Up Bulb is worse, and that would be funny. I'm all for it. I'm all for that. If they ban Jet Synchron and unban Glow Up Bulb.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather just the simple Swills
Well,
card get
yes,
banned. But,
I agree. Yes, that too.
If they, because I really think that this is like probably the best card to get hit to make the game the most healthy.
Sure.
However,
I agree with that.
I think more likely is like we will see like multiple limited to ones. And I don't think it'll be wanted. I don't think it'll be wanted. I don't think it'll be a Die Bellstar. It'll definitely not be Bonfire. It'll be like Ash to 1. And now if you put like Ash to 1, it means you have to rely more on Bonfire, which makes Droll unlock better because now you can't go normal summon Ash, then play Bonfire or summon Poplar afterwards. Most of the time it's going to be, but more often than not, you'd be playing Bonfire to search Ash instead. But that means also probably that you are more likely for your Imperm to do something, right? Because they now can't play Bonfire to extend. They have to play Bonfire to try and get started. But that just makes it more feel bad. That's like, okay, I got hand trapped once, I can't do anything. But if I don't get hand trapped, I still get the world.
If
You
Ash
still
got
literally
limited,
get everything.
If Ash got limited, I'd probably just play 3 Poplar. Like obviously, like it's a weaker normal summon, but it plays.
Yeah.
Like I
you
guess
probably
you
would.
would. Yeah. You'd probably play, even in the Fire King deck, you'd probably play 3 Diabellstar, 3 Poplar with if Snake Eye Ash got limited. Probably. But yeah, I prefer a world where like original is banned, and then I do think there is a universe where the pure Fire King deck, or like Fire King with like Dogmatica cards, like could actually be good. There's just no reason to play that deck right now because that deck is so clearly worse than a Snake Eyes variant. But if original is banned and then all the decks get a little weaker, the Fire King cards are still strong, and you could justify playing a much bigger Fire King engine, so.
And I liked playing
that
version. I liked playing more Fire King cards because I like the Fire King cards in general.
Yeah.
And so this is something that I wanted to talk about earlier, where you're talking about looking at OCG list and comparing them to our list.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I thought even going into the UDS, again, Jesse and I had like the same thoughts. Somehow came up with a similar thought process of cutting down even more Fire King cards, where it was just 1 field spell, 1 of the continuous spell, and 2 Kieran.
Yeah.
And even going as far as like sometimes going second, siding out down to 1 Kieran going second. Because the games you lose are like the games that you like have these cards. And in Japan, you see them using like 2 field spell and using a Skyburn and using 3 Kieran. And I'm just like, holy shit.
I don't know
how you guys are ever playing a game.
Maxi, I guess you draw more cards.
Let's keep in mind we're just looking at locals.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. I mentioned that earlier where I said like we're looking at such a small like pocket, that it's like we're not seeing the whole picture, obviously.
Right. But, I mean, the decks you're looking at are decks that are like people played in like 75% people tournaments though.
Yeah.
They're not just like locals. They're like big locals.
Yeah, but they're
And
not like 1,500 person,
just have-
like YCSs or
no,
whatever.
but you have to add them up. Like they're
Yeah,
like
no, I
literally,
agree. Yeah, yeah.
178 person locals, and all of them have the exact same deck almost card
Yes,
for card.
yes,
And
I
that's
agree.
even like
yeah.
it's like actually crazy how all of them have just used like the same main deck, and then just a very little different of a side deck. But the main deck is almost universally the same card for card.
Yeah, like
for Fire King and
36 of the
OTG
cards
right
are
now.
the same most of the time. Yeah.
But I digress. It goes back to like I think playing more Fire King cards in the Fire King deck is more fun and playing an actual Fire King deck than playing like this mishmash.
Yes, but it's just so much weaker right now that you can't do it.
Right.
But if they hit the other deck, then you probably if or even if it's a combination of things, if they go ban Zillantis, ban Link Kuriboh, ban Original, I'm busting out my QCR Nadir Servants and I'm sleeving up some Fire King structure decks, maybe, or a voice deck. I'm not sure.
On my forbidden list, I have written up for me personally. I have Link Kuriboh and Original banned. And then I also have some like less things like Calamity. That card should have been banned.
Yeah.
Like Baron, I hope gets banned. It's gotten its reprint. And then one thing I hope that they have done this before is they take into account if they do hit these decks, what other decks might become good that would be problems, and be decks that would be good before. So like before the fire stuff, I would have said you should probably have hit Labyrinth. It consistently did well over and over and over again and never got any hits. I still think that if you hit the fire deck, you should also hit the Labyrinth deck, and I think you should ban Labyrinth Coup Clock.
Yes, I agree. I think that is very logical.
It is the thing that the deck still gets to play doing the same things. You just can't do the crazy combos where I get to activate my cards turn 1, and also I set them on your turn, and I also activate them immediately. It just becomes more fair.
Yes, Coup Clock plus Eradicator plus transaction rollback plus L plus ratio, etc.
Right.
Or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Whatever they do. I don't even know anymore.
But yeah, other than that, I think hopefully they like do the same thing. Limit anti-spell, summon limit to 1. I kind of would just wish they would just do something to tactics, just because I hate that card so much. I doubt they will. Same with the Crossout Designator. I hope that seeing everyone play 3 of this card means like, oh, they'll probably think of it as like more of an anti-spell thing of like, oh, anti-spell comes in and out of the format. Yeah, but what's in the format? It's really stupid.
really
And
not
the same
fun
thing
to
with
play.
Crossout. When Crossout Designator's in the format, it's really stupid. It means like
I hope they put
bad
it to 1, and then I can be more upset.
Yeah, I mean, I know people are like, oh, I'd rather it be at 3 than 1. Not me. I'd rather see that card 1 in every 10 games than every game.
Well, or you could see it 0 games.
If the option is having it at 3 or 1, I would choose 1 every single time.
For which card? What are we talking about?
For Crossout Designator.
Oh, Crossout, sure, whatever. For anti-spell, I would rather that card be at 0, and I will actually, if it is at 1 or 2 or 3, I'm still mad. So,
well, I mean, I have the same thought process. Like, if I have to deal with a card at 1 or at 3, I would rather deal with that card 1 in every 10 games than 1 in.
For a card like Anti-Spell, yes, because that's not a card people are like like for a card like Emptiness, I would quite literally rather it be at 3 than at 0 because my deck will literally be different. For a card like Anti-Spell, I would rather that card be at I would rather it be banned, then I'd rather it be at 1, and then we go from there. But like for stuff like Emptiness, I would quite literally rather it be at 3 than at 1.
Well, it's a good thing we don't gotta deal with
that card's at 0. See, look, 0. See, and now everyone's happy with that card. But imagine a world, society, if Summon Limit and Invisible Fragrance are at 0, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think Crossout and like Call by the Grave don't need to exist, but I'd rather those cards be at 1 than at 3. I don't know. That's just me though.
I hate Call by so much. Still, I actually hate at 1 more than anything, to be honest.
I think because whenever we talked about this before briefly, every time my opponent call bides me, they get like a smug look on
Yes, literally like, you thought Droll was good? I have called by. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, literally. It's like then they tactic. Oh, that happened to me too. My Droll got called by. Then they tactics me, and I went, why did I even wake up this morning?
Yeah, that's like the shit in your mouth combo is where you cross out or call by your opponent, then tactics them. It's like literally. Why did
I even show up to this tournament?
Not only did your card not work, now you don't have a good hand either.
Now yes. It's just, oh my god.
Ugh. And Crossout also does that. Crossout on the hand trap and then tactics,
Yep.
which is also feels like an illegal combo, but it just works. All right, so something I would like to propose. Some of the people hated him when he was here, but now that he's gone, perhaps things have gotten worse. Do we need Gamma back? Do we need these hand traps that cannot get called by and are less likely to get crossed out because they might not have Gamma in their deck going first?
No, I think we just don't need cross out.
And this is going to be a little weird because they can't just ban all of them. The cards that are generally used to just win in time, like the list can't be like Newly Forbidden, Spooky Dogwood, and 4-star Ladybug, and Skullmark Ladybug, and Volcanic Scattershot, and Agave Dragon, and the rest, right? Like you can't just ban every single card that manipulates life points like in the whole game. But like you can do some of them. Like you can do like the egregious ones. You can ban Spooky Dogwood if you really wanted to. That's a card that's
That card has
only
no purpose
been
outside
used for
of,
evil.
Yeah, that card has no purpose outside of winning in time, and
Yeah.
that's the only thing it's been used. It's used for evil.
Quite literally for evil. Same with Agave Dragon. That card does not have text other than win in time when you're
Yeah.
trying to cheat your opponent. Like it's very upsetting. Like I just
At least Volcanic Scattershot you can use to blow up your opponent.
Yes, that card unfortunately he stays because he actually has like applicable text that is like
You could
not even
ban Sprite Sprint, which is a card we've talked about before getting banned.
I wouldn't hate that either. I actually would not. Yeah, I think that card is also unreasonable. And unless they have more sprite support, truly will not be used except for evil to send Scattershot. But, whatever. But yeah, so I wouldn't hate some. But, like, it's weird, right? Because if they ban those cards, that's, like, acknowledging that their policy is a problem, like, yada, yada, yada. Like, I don't know. Like, I truly wish there would just be, like, and not to say, like, this isn't like the judge's fault. Like they can't have somebody enforcing slow play at every single table of every single match of a 2,000 person tournament, but like, I don't know. It is unfortunate that it happens. And like a lot of the times it is just probably people like just playing slowly and playing to some alt win condition that shouldn't exist. But
yeah,
banning Agave Dragon is not going to fix the problem. But
any time cards at the UDS, after playing at the UDS, I only went to time once. And I only went to time once at the, well, I guess Mac technically went to time, and it was not me at the at Vegas. But at Vegas, I was like, well, I know I can play my deck fast enough, but I'm not sure I trust my opponent. So at Vegas, I did side Agave Dragon, but I never sided it in, so it didn't come to that. But yeah, I feel like time stuff I think is best handled with
a
different
policy adjustment.
policies.
Yeah, I don't even know what it could be at this point. Like, it can't just go back to what it used to be, because what it used to be, games lasted a million years. But
right.
Truly, this one just feels so bad that and it's, usually whenever we talk about things like this, we at least try to offer a solution. I have to think about it more. Maybe that's a fun thought for next time, is like, we think about some slight adjustment to make it feel a little bit better, maybe. But off the top of my head, I do not have a proposed improvement. But yeah. Other than that, is it Shifter's time? It is semi-limited in Japan. That doesn't mean anything to me. But
I mean, I think it's fine to go down. I mean, it's another card where like I'd much rather that card be at 2 than at 3.
Sure. I mean, yes, that's a card that that one is like, yeah, it's like it's a build around, and when it's not at 3, you can't really build around it. Right? So
yeah,
it's a little different.
Like it does see like some play in Japan sometimes using, and one thing I don't want to like go into another topic. I do want to wrap this up, but
Yeah.
a deck that's been seeing success in Japan is I think it's Tenpai, the new Dragon OTK deck.
Yes. That looks
It's
kind of
actually
cool.
been doing really well, much more than I gave it credit for. In my head, that deck was
I'm looking at this deck
unplayable.
now, and it plays Zealantis and Raging Phoenix and Princess.
You can also play, because they're fighter, you can play all that combo,
Ah.
but it's also a deck that can play Shifter and stuff like that. But it also plays like 20 hand traps. So you like Shifter would still be played in decks like Fluander and Kashtira, but I mean the chance of opening it down from 2 to 3 or 2 from 3 is like 23% versus like 33% or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's something. It's between like 9 and 10%. I don't remember the exact numbers, but yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
30. Yeah,
It's significant. Yeah.
33 is 10% difference, so like 23%. So like you'll see it, 1 in 5 games or whatever around instead of
1 in every 3 games.
or in every
Yeah.
3 games. But yeah, I think we definitely should have after Sydney is this upcoming weekend, so we'll get info from Bohdan on how that goes, and I think then we should after talking about Sydney do maybe like a full ban list episode.
Riddled with depression, I hope. Wait, are we talking about my
Yes,
YCS
riddled
Sydney
with depression.
experience? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right. So I think that wraps everything up. I think. Thank you all for listening. As we just wanted to make sure we got this out before Sydney, where Bohdan will be entertaining the foreigners being like Americans,
Yes.
For the next week or so. So we will, as Jeff said, we'll be back after YCS Sydney, where we can have Bohdan give us, a recap of his event, and then we can probably go a bit more in depth on what we want to.
Just quickly for those who are still listening. So they have 3 giant cards for Sydney, and 1 is on Friday, which we usually don't do. And we only have the venue till a certain period of I think it's like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and the public event is starting at 2. And they could not do a 64-person giant card or like 128 or uncap it. So Friday, 32-person giant card, Promethean Princess. I managed to get a ticket, which was just randomly dropped online. So hopefully I can win the giant card, and then the rest of the weekend doesn't matter. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You usually don't get to play a giant card and win the event, but that could happen.
Yeah, for sure.
All
right. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Adios.
See ya.